Good morning to everyone. Welcome to this meeting where we will be discussing the annual report on infrastructure and the Housing Tribunal. I hope for a very fruitful discussions, and really looking forward to the information that will be presented. I am going to start the meeting by just doing a roll call with the members on my left. So if the permanent, I'll first deal with the permanent members, then the alternate members. So yeah, I am Dirk Wessels, the chairperson on the Standing Committee on Infrastructure. Member Van Wyk, are you present?
Present, Chair. Good day to you and Minister and all members and officials.
Thank you very much. Member Bryant.
Present.
Member Mbombo.
Good morning, everyone. I'm French Mbombo. Thank you.
And then Member Brunkhuis is the alternate member.
Morning, Chair, and morning, Minister, morning, all colleagues. Khalil Brunkhuis, also member of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament.
Thank you very much. And then online, we have Member Petrus. Can you just confirm your attendance?
Good morning, Chair and colleagues.
Thank you very much. And Member Heron.
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much. I'm online.
Thank you. And then I also now saw Member Lacker just logged on as well. Member Lacker, if you can also just indicate your presence.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. My name is Pet Lacker. I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you very much. With that done, Minister, I would like to welcome you and your department to the meeting today. Let me first start by thanking you for the amazing work that you and the department is undertaking. I think it's appreciated by us and by the members, the citizens of the Western Cape as a whole. I am now, Minister, through you, maybe just to introduce yourself, the HOD, and then HOD, I don't know if you want the rest of administration to introduce themselves or how you would like to deal with that.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Chair, maybe a suggestion that as we speak, everybody indicates who they are.
Perfect.
Because it can also save time.
100%. Thank you very much, HOD. Minister Simmers, I'm then going to hand over to you to give some introductory remarks, followed by the HOD, and members, then that will be followed by the Western Cape Housing Tribunal, and we will first deal with that section of the annual report. Member Simmers, over to you. Can we just mute? Minister Simmers, I'm then going to hand over to you to give some introductory remarks.
I was just listening to your voice again, so I was like, okay, that means what. Chairperson, thank you very much, and thank you to the Standing Committee members this morning to present, firstly, the annual report of the Western Cape Rental Housing Tribunal. Last year when we did this, it was our chairperson's baptism of fire, because she was literally just a few weeks into a job and she had to present an annual report. So this year, she's had a full cycle to prepare for this. But indeed, if you look at and she will touch on it, the facts sheets and the work that she and our colleagues have been doing, you will note a vast improvement. You will see the introduction of technology. We have been able in the year under review to start expanding into the rural areas, given that there is also a need for the tribunal, given the impact post-COVID-19 on our citizens' ability to actually honor the rental obligations, but also to empower them about the rights which they have, but similarly also the landlords who also have rights in this relationship. It's a very fine line to walk, Honourable Chairperson, given that for the year under review, a number of cases which has come before the committee or the tribunal speaks to that which sometimes falls outside of the mandate, which they duly exercise, and sometimes, sadly, members of this House tend to not understand what their function is and up until which point they are allowed to function. As well, more so I'm reflecting here on the current changing relationship between the social housing sector and their new repurposing of themselves and its impact also on their relationship with their tenants across the metro basin itself, which is we are seeing this phenomenon which is contributing to the tribunal's caseload as well. So with that, Chair, through you, I don't know if HUD wants to add anything. Otherwise, formally, I'll hand over to our Rand Housing Tribunal chairperson because now she's had a full year to prepare for today.
Thank you very much, Minister. We can then go over to the chairperson of the Housing Tribunal, Ms. Arendse. Thanks.
Good morning to the chair and to members and Minister Summers, who is the head of our department. I want to thank everybody for, in fact, I want to thank Minister Summers for his leadership, his guidance, and his commitment, which has allowed the tribunal to serve the citizens of this province in rental housing matters and disputes. What we've noted of late, we've seen many matters come before the tribunal of various kinds, from unlawful evictions to deposit disputes and failure to maintain properties. But of late, there is an increasing trend in the economic hardship-driven disputes, such as landlords failing to refund deposits and tenants failing to make their payments. There has been an increase or an effort to also formalize the relationships that the tribunal has with the local government so as to stretch the services of the tribunal to the length and breadth of our boundaries in the Western Cape. And that's where I will leave it. I think I may have forgotten to say that I'm Anita Arendse, the Rental Housing Tribunal chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arendse. To the members online and in the House, you would have received the fact sheet of the Western Cape Housing Tribunal, as well as the Rental Housing Tribunal annual report for the 24-25 financial year. And I will now go over to the first set of questions that the members might have. Can I get an indication of any questions at this stage, please? Member Bryant, Member Lacker, I do note you as well. I'm going to start with Member Bryant and then Member Lacker, and we'll deal with the two members at a time. So, yeah, Member Bryant, over to you.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you to Ms. Arendse for the brief introduction.
Hello, Chair.
Member Lacker, we first dealing with Member Bryant in the chamber, and then we're gonna go over to you. So if you have any, if there's any input, then you can. Then I'll note it after Member Bryant. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I think the role that the Rental Housing Tribunal plays is an incredibly important one, providing people with an opportunity for an intermediary without having to resort to legal action, which we know in many instances is prohibitively expensive, not just for the average person, but for everybody. It's an incredibly expensive and arduous process to get involved in, and especially for a tenant, it can be a very, very intimidating and challenging thing. So thank you for the role that you play. And I'm very glad to hear about the steps that are being taken to expand this across the province as well, because it does tend to be something which is concentrated a bit more in the more urban and metropolitan parts of the province. I've only got one question. Page 6, you've got the organogram there, and it's good to see a sheet where all the posts are filled. What we found in many others, and for lots of different reasons, numerous vacancies across departments. So I just want to confirm with you that this organogram is still sort of the same. There haven't been any changes, and we haven't had any vacancies arising between then and now. That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bryant. Member Lacker, over to you on the online platform.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning once again. No, mine, Chair, in relation to the forward that we've just received now is to get an understanding, Chair, that as and when people are being evicted, either by banks, what sort of retribution or to what extent can the department assist those people who may have probably be renting, some of them, or those who not only renting, but those who have purchased properties through the bank? I understand that the role is through those people who are renting. And so those are the ones that the department mainly focuses on. But there is a serious trend where people, for some reasons, who have not been able to pay for their bond, that are being evicted. So I just want to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Lacker. Minister, through you to Ms. Orense.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's Nathan Adrianse, Director responsible for Public Information and Stakeholder Relations. I think the Chair can deal with Member Lekker's question. In terms of Member Bryant's question, the organogram. Member Bryant, I can confirm that currently we have 2 vacancies that exists, and we are in the process of filling those vacancies.
Member Lacker, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking what the tribunal can do about people who have been evicted, and are you saying that they may have a need for housing or a need for immediate action? I'm just trying to understand the question.
Okay, the question is two-pronged, ma'am. Through you, Chairperson, my apologies. The question is two-pronged. One, those who are being evicted in the rental stock, i.e. those ones or similarly to the case of the recent cases in Reitevach. Then the second one speaks to which may not be within your jurisdiction. Those people who have bought houses through the bank, who have failed to honor their part, what sort of legal assistance can they get as and when they are being evicted? Is there any role that the department can play, even if it's not a legal matter, but just to advise them on what could be done in such cases? Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Member Lecker. Just in terms of the current social housing issues which have been in the public domain, I can confirm that in terms of DCI, we've received approximately 40 cases from DCI tenants. And from a procedural point of view, I want to stress this to the members and those who are online as well. The tribunal can only get involved in matters where an official complaint is lodged with us. So at the moment, in terms of DCI, we are working through those cases. We've engaged with the tenants as well as the social housing institution. And in terms of our process, we've given both parties 14 days within which to respond. One of the outstanding issues that we've asked the tenants to provide us with is their lease agreements, as well as what we term the unilateral changes to the lease agreement. So we are working through those matters. The chair can then respond to Member Lecker in terms of the other portion of the question.
Thank you very much. Through the chair then, insofar as matters are concerned where persons who are unable to pay their bonds, how the tribunal could be of assistance, is obviously at the outset to say that we don't have jurisdiction where persons are owners of their property and stands to be evicted. Obviously, those would be matters one would refer to institutions such as legal aid. Insofar as people who are evicted in a landlord-tenant relationship, the tribunal deals with the matter on an urgent basis. The matters would ordinarily appear before the tribunal within 24 hours and above, insofar as the urgency of evictions are concerned, and then the tribunal deals, hands out a ruling in that regard. Amongst other things, ordering reinstatement and or directing the landlord what the tribunal expects of it. I trust that I've responded adequately.
Thank you very much. I noted the HOD also wants input.
Thank you, Chair. So as far as the department is concerned and the assistance that we provide, the department is recently, with recently I mean over the last year, engaged and started a process with FNB, which was the first bank to do so, where we actually go through the credentials and the profile of the people who can't pay their houses, their bonds, and where we then evaluate them as if they right from the outset applied in terms of our subsidies. Where they do qualify, we then have an agreement with the bank that we pay in that money to the bank, and the people then gets a title deed as opposed to getting evicted. We have handed over in excess of 50 title deeds in that way, and we are also then this year trying to get all the other banks to participate in this. Of course, at the outset, there was a little bit of skepticism by the other banks, but having gone through it and proven that it can work, we are seeing interest from the other banks, and we're hoping that we can help more people to secure their homes instead of losing it. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think just to expand on that, before the members convey this as we will be bailing out people who can't pay their bonds, the bulk of people who have benefited through FNB were literally in the final year or two of paying it over 20-year bond. We need to emphasize that, which means due to the impact of COVID-19, literally on the brink of ownership, they were about to lose their houses. And one does need to compliment FNB as the partner here, because they wrote off all the rates and the interest which they accrued over the period. So as much as our subsidy quantum might be X, many a times the interest that FNB wrote off was a lot more than that. So this partnership is reciprocated both ways. And I mean, we are waiting to conclude the relationship with other banks. And given that the first beneficiaries of this partnership were from George to Retreat to Mitchell's Plain, it covers a vast area. And we are about to receive the next batch of title deeds from FNB very soon, and we will hand them over.
Thank you very much, Minister. Online, I see two hands again. Member Lacker, I'm not sure if that is a legacy hand, followed by Member Heron. So Member Lacker, I'm first going to hand over to you.
Actually, Chair, this is a legacy hand. I'm happy with the responses that we've received thus far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Heron.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the complaints from DCI that the Rental Housing Tribunal is engaged with or dealing with. There is, it's not just DCI, there are tenants in social housing complexes across the city of Cape Town who are coming forward with complaining about unfair practices. And I was wanting to understand the rental tribunal's role in dealing with the roles and responsibilities of a provincial government in terms of the Social Housing Act. Is the Rental Housing Tribunal only interested in breaches of the lease agreement between the tenant and the social housing company, or does it have a role to play in implementing what the Social Housing Act talks about, which is fairness and equity and compliance with the national norms and standards? And if they don't have that role, then who does have that role? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. Over to the department.
I see another hand, Chair. Member Petrus.
Thank you. Sorry, that one came late now. Member Petrus, you can ask your question as well.
Thank you, Chairperson and colleagues. I just want to know the management, if there are representative across the province or only certain parts of the province.
Yeah, thank you very much, Member Petrus. Over to the department.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to Member Petrus. Just in terms of how we and where we are established, our head office is here in Cape Town, and then we have an office in George. What we are striving to do, members, is establish rental housing information offices across the province. I can report that we have established an office in Mossel Bay. And further to that, we also have in the pipeline, we have other municipalities such as George, Oudtshoorn, Pito, Theewaterskloof, Overstrand, who are on the cusp of signing the MOU with the department for us to establish those information officers. And then in the next financial year, we're also busy engaging with a number of municipalities to roll out their information officers. So that will then expand our footprint across the municipality. I think just to deal with a portion of Member Heron's question, our role as the tribunal is to intervene where we have a legitimate complaint. If you look at what we've done in terms of just engaging with different entities, we have as a tribunal engaged with SHRA, and we also engaged directly with the various social housing institutions within the Western Cape. We really want to implore members and citizens of the public that our role will only start when there's an official complaint lodged with the tribunal. Okay.
Thank you very much. Insofar as the matters before the tribunal, in fact, as we speak, my colleagues are busy with the adjudication of a matter that has been brought to us on an urgent basis. So as we speak, I don't have an outcome, of course, but they are busy with matters as and when complaints are placed before the tribunal. Okay.
Thank you very much. Member Mbombo, I know that you've got a question.
Thank you very much. Looking at the paper that you submitted, can you explain the increase? There's been an increase in terms of the inquiries. There's also been an increase in the complaints. How would you describe in terms of the significance? Is it because there's more work that is being done, or is it about the people are more complaining? Because if you look in terms of the 2021 figures up to now, for example, the number of inquiries received per month, the 24-25, it's about 2,600 and something. Similar with the calls received per month, there's been an increase. Number two, there is most of the common lodge complaints. You get the biggest chunk, that is coming from the failure to refund deposit. And then the second one that I'm interested in is about unlawful notice to vacate. What does it mean when it becomes unlawful in terms of the notice? Having said that, you find that there's been a backlog or the increase in complaints or the increase in terms of the call center calls, and you look in terms of the hearing, there have been quite a number of the hearings that are being postponed, like 192. Whilst you mentioned the part of the reasons about the unavailability, medical reasons, legal representation, it's part of those. And then lastly, I've seen in terms of the expenditure for this year, I'm not sure whether that's a correct figure or is a mistake. If you look at the expenditure in regard to the communication services, cell phone, throughout, like in the 23-24, there was about 10,000. And then it went to 24-25, it's 107, from 10 to 107. It's at page 7. Is it about is that about the purchase of the phones, like from 10,000 to 107? And if you look at the previous years, they always be like 3420, but 207, it has multiplied by so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. I noted you're online. Yeah, so maybe you can go ahead and then I'll have a bite after you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the answers I received, but I'm not sure that I got the answer that I actually wanted. I wanted to understand. I understand that the Rental Housing Tribunal acts on a formal complaint, but what I was asking was, what are the nature of those complaints? Will the Rental Housing Tribunal, for example, deal with a complaint of lockout, where a social housing company denies a tenant access to their building? Does the Housing Tribunal deal with lock-in, where the building is shut down and people are not allowed out after a certain hour in the evening? So where does the Rental Tribunal's mandate end? Or those kinds of complaints that we're getting from tenants of social housing complexes are bringing to us, would those be appropriate for the tribunal to deal with? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to Member Heron. Just to confirm that in terms of the current cases which we're dealing with DCI, the complaints relate to unfair charges, unilateral changes to the lease agreement, unlawful notice to vacate, illegal lockout, termination of municipal services, and then there's an allegation related to the unprocedural actions infringing tenants' rights. So that's the basket of complaints that we are dealing with currently in terms of DCI. Can I deal with Member Mbombo's questions, Chair, through you? In terms of the expenditure, Member Mbombo, on page 7 of the annual report, the figure which you see in that particular page relates to cell phone charges. Not all of the staff have cell phone allowances, but a big portion of that figure relates to telephones which we installed, new telephones for the entire component. And it got to about 93,000 of that figure is for the telephones itself, the actual hardware device. Then just in terms of postponed matters as well, Member Mbombo, the tribunal sits, and unfortunately, sometimes there are matters which have to be postponed. The parties aren't ready. Some of the issues relate to medical emergencies. In many instances, we find that there's legal representation which is missing, and that results in a postponement, which also then adds to your backlog of cases. Unlawful notice to vacate. One of the things which we impress upon parties is the need to have a lease agreement in place in writing. Because what you find is that landlords and tenants have a very loose arrangement. And this is why when we deal with matters, we ask very specifically, can we see what is contained within your lease agreement? And typically in your lease agreement, it says to you, you need to give your tenant 1 month's notice to vacate. And what we're finding is that in cases which are lodged with the tribunal, that period is not adhered to. So this is where it's unlawful notice to vacate. In other words, I give you 1 week. I say to you today, I need you out by next week, the 24th, and therefore it becomes unlawful notice to vacate. In terms of the increase in cases, Member Mbombo and members of this committee, what we've done as the tribunal is we've had focused engagements across the province with a number of different entities. And that, of course, has seen people making different calls. You see the number of calls have increased. And likewise, we see now that there is the number of complaints which have also increased. Previously, when we presented in this committee, one of the questions which you posed was, what is the split between metro and non-metro? Where we previously would have said 90% of the cases are lodged within the metro and 10% in the non-metro. In this reporting period, we now sit with a situation where we see 70% of our cases are lodged in the metro and 30% in the non-metro areas. And this for us is a very positive step that we're now seeing our reach broadened, and we are working with, as the chair has raised, working with local government through the Tusang mobile program. As this particular department also, we've initiated a number of what we call service fairs in the metro and outside of the metro, again taking the services of the tribunal out to those most in need of our service. I think I've covered Member Mbombo. Thank you very much, Member.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions or any questions from any of the members pertaining to the annual report of the Rental Housing Tribunal? Going once, going twice, done. We then thank you very much for the members of the Housing Tribunal. I did note that you asked that if you can be excused after your session. So, is there any concluding remarks that you want to make from your side? And then you're more than welcome to excuse yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. In conclusion, I just want to remind the members that there is an amendment act that is not yet in operation. And this amendment act was actually passed in Parliament in 2014 already. And Parliament at that stage said, when it was passed, that the act will only come into operation when the regulations are published in the Government Gazette. So that is still not been promulgated, and it's not enacted yet, the regulations. But with that will obviously come relief for the citizens of South Africa. Number one, that Amendment Act seeks to force the hand of landlords to ensure that there is a written lease agreement. And secondly, aggrieved parties who are not happy with the tribunal's decisions, they may approach the tribunal directly once an appeal tribunal is established. And that will also alleviate then persons having to approach the High Court in matters which becomes then expensive. So to that end, thank you very much. The tribunal thanks this House for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Orenson. Thank you to the work that you and the tribunal is doing. It is greatly appreciated. With that, we then go over to the Department of Infrastructure. Minister, over to you and the. Yep, they are excused. They're happy to go.
Thank you very much, the chairperson and members of the standing committee, both physically here and also online. My HOD, my DDGs, the senior team present here, all colleagues will be contributing once we start delving into our annual report. Indeed, this is my distinct honor to present to you today the 2024-2025 annual report for the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure, which is also our second annual report as a department. Now, for the year or the financial year under review, it marked another period of determined action by our Department of Infrastructure under very difficult circumstances, I must add. Our province continues to navigate an exceptionally complex environment. Before this, just ask questions to the Rental Housing Tribunal, you will have picked up even that space is becoming even more complex as we speak here. So, but the complexities in terms of the Department of Infrastructure itself is one that's defined by economic uncertainty. We all experienced Budget 1 and Budget 2 and nearly Budget 3. An ever-growing demand for services, some legitimate, some tried to eagerly demand these services. The urgent need to transform our infrastructure, ultimately in our delivery of infrastructure response to climate change, which the reality last 10 years. Rapid urbanization, which you all see actually when you come to the legislature along the N1, N2, and N7 corridor, we can now see rapid urbanization in its full bouquet. And also a constrained fiscal environment. Budgets getting less, targets not being adjusted, but we are supposed to deliver. But despite these challenges, Chairperson, our department has continued to deliver tangible outcomes for the people of the Western Cape. Many a times under very difficult circumstances, given the relationship with local government and its impact on our ability to actually deliver these tangible outcomes for these citizens. Now, over the past year, and you will note in the report, we have accelerated catalytic housing and human settlements projects. It's prioritized in terms of the upgrading and maintenance of our provincial road network. And we have strengthened our partnership approach with municipalities, with relevant national entities and departments, but most importantly, the private sector in our communities. These efforts remain central to our vision of using infrastructure as the foundation for economic growth. To ensure that job creation actually is for all of our people, not for some of our people. But something which we mustn't be afraid to discuss in this chamber. Spatial transformation is still ongoing. It will be ongoing for quite a while until such time that we can effectively address the legacy of apartheid within our own province. Now, significant progress was made in advancing key projects, which is aligned with the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework 2050. This included the implementation of priority housing development areas. We have seen continued investment in terms of our expanded public works program as a provincial department. We have noted the modernization of the public works infrastructure to improve efficiency, but also that there can be environmental sustainability in that investment. But importantly, the department has also maintained its focus on safeguarding and maintaining our existing assets, even though we are expected to also expand and grow forth on that asset base as well. From schools to health facilities, transport routes and roads. And we do this as far as possible to the highest standard which the fiscal environment permits us to do so. I'm particularly encouraged as the Minister by the way in which this department and my department continues to adapt and innovate under very difficult circumstances. And we are doing this by deepening collaboration with the private sector. And we are exploring alternative funding models. We are working vigorously to unlock the resources needed to deliver infrastructure at the scale it is required. Given the national grants will never be efficient for the migration to our province. Innovation is needed to scale up the delivery capacity. It includes an increased emphasis on renewable energy, energy resilience in public facilities. We all experienced for the year under review certain parts of the year when infrastructure was impacted by load shedding. But also a more citizen-centric approach to planning and service delivery. Now, none of these achievements, Chair and members, would have been possible without the dedication of the entire team that sits here, the entire team who are downstairs, busy doing fundraising for something which isn't even within our portfolio. And I do want to encourage the members, please go and spend 15 minutes on a bike. It's for a good cause. But all of those employees spread across all 5 districts in the Western Cape. This truly is a phenomenal department. We treat each other like family, and that commitment shown through how we work. Because their commitment is not just to public service. It's to public service in the face of resource constraints. We have to deal with growing service delivery demands. But at the end of the day, our success remains the commitment of our employees. And I do want to put on record, I do want to thank each and every one of our staff members. Remember what the ranking is within this department. But looking ahead, we are acutely aware that our work is far from done. Again, we are dealing with spatial transformation, job creation, and empowerment, which means that this department will continue to focus on spatial redress, ensuring that infrastructure investment brings communities firstly closer to economic opportunities and creates a more inclusive, sustainable Western Cape into the future. But to do this, we also need to strengthen governance as a department, which means we are driving organizational efficiency. We are embracing new technologies and methods that will improve the quality and impact of the services which we deliver to the citizens of the Western Cape. Our annual report for 2024-2025 financial year reflects both the progress which we have made, but also the scale of the work that lies ahead, which we are well acute of and aware of as a department. Now, through collaboration, innovation, and the unwavering focus on the communities we serve, we must never lose the objective of who we are doing this for. The Department of Infrastructure will continue to deliver the infrastructure that enables a better future for all. But again, the partner here that is key to enabling this vision to become a reality is the communities and the citizens who must benefit, who are key to our success by taking ownership of what we do for them. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Good morning, good morning, members. I'm Advocate Chantal Smith. I'm the Head of Department for the Department of Infrastructure. And I would first like to start off by thanking you for this engagement. Thanking you for the opportunity for us to engage and to account for the work that we have done. And secondly, maybe just contextually, Chair, to indicate, as Minister has alluded to, that this department, unlike any other department in the Western Cape government, spends only 10% of its total budget on compensation of employees. The rest of it is about delivery. And therefore, Chair, every effort that has gone into this, every single moment dedicated to service delivery by this entire team. Chair, running into situations when there are floods, when other people are running out, they are running in. This is the dedication and the commitment of this team. And I wish to take this opportunity also to acknowledge that. And with that, Chair, I hand back to you. We are ready to engage and thank you for this.
Thank you very much, Minister. HOD members, we will first be dealing with Part A, so that is from page 1 to page 42. In the case of any questions or comments, if I can please ask that you just indicate the page number within the report as well, which would just make it easier to answer. So at this stage, I am opening the floor for questions. Member Heron, member Heron, I see your hand. Is there any? You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question in response to the MEC's, or the Minister's introduction, and in particular, the commitment to spatial transformation. And I would be interested to understand whether he agrees with the Mayor of Cape Town, who says that spatial apartheid is propaganda language that is no longer rooted in reality. I assume that if you're talking about spatial transformation, you understand that that spatial apartheid has not been addressed, and that's why spatial transformation is an imperative and a priority for the department. But his colleague, the Mayor of Cape Town, thinks it's not a reality. Does he share that view? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me welcome the opening remarks from both the Minister and the HOD. One question, Chair, or two from my side. If I read the forward from the Minister, there's one thing that I pick up, Chair, which is in relation to the issues related to the EPWP. And I think as it is a critical project that seeks to assist people in addressing their economic conditions, I am tempted, Chair, to request for an understanding, particularly if you're talking about how the same concept of the public works program has been used for political reasons. I want to request the Office of the Minister and significantly receive an understanding as to how this particular project can be used, and ensuring that in doing that, the program becomes available to all citizens, regardless of their political affiliation. Then the second one, Chair, would be the modernization of the public works infrastructure to improve efficiency. And that leads to problems like in the case where there are floods, where roads are being affected, with a declining budget. What are the implications of having a declining budget and the roads that remain not being repaired and not being maintained? So what exactly can the department do? Because there has to be a way. You can't have an infrastructure that gets to be ruined by floods, and because there's no budget, it doesn't get to be repaired. I'm sure the MEC would understand that I work in a very poor community and I see the roads that are not being repaired on a daily basis when I'm driving there. Then the last one, Chair, would be the Human Settlement Development Grant, particularly in the informal settlement upgrade, where I've picked up that that grant is not being fully spent.
while there are really critical projects that were either stalled or not rolled over. And I think for me, this means that families in informal settlements continue to wait for decent housing, not because there's no money available, but because the planning is not effective enough. And this non-spending or minimal spending is recurring. I think I must be honest, it's recurring. And for me, sometimes I want to think that it had to do with a weak contractor management process. And if we continue doing like this, I mean, every year, these things spike. And I don't know, but I want to believe that there is a notion of fiscal dumping. I think it's got to do with fiscal dumping because whilst projects are not being attended to, there's always a problem with security and extortion. How best can the department plan, but also what's there, what needs to be done, because clearly there's something that is not being done properly or that is not being aligned properly. Poor planning or poor management of the contractor. So please, maybe the department can assist in unpacking and understanding exactly what is it that needs to be done, and particularly with the current situation that people are exposed to. After COVID-19, there's been so many informal settlements that have spiked because people cannot afford to rent anymore, but these issues remain unattended to. Regardless of the new informal settlements that popped up, there were informal settlements even before then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Lacker. We're now going to just deal with Member Heron and Member Lacker's question. After that, we'll go to Member Mbombo, followed by Member Beatrice, and then we'll deal with that after. Minister, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And again, thank you to Member Heron for a question. Again, the context within which the Mayor of Cape Town spoke, I cannot comment on that. I will reflect on what special transformation means to me as the Minister, the Executive Authority tasked with infrastructure, realizing that infrastructure ultimately plays variable roles, but the most important role infrastructure plays. When I talk about infrastructure, it's not just housing. I'm talking about roads, I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about clinics, I'm talking about all the other forms related to this. I do realize, and we must be honest with one another, the spatial planning of apartheid sadly created areas which were for certain racial groups. That is a living reality. You can go anywhere in this province, you can see the legacy of spatial planning, which was not done to create sustainable communities, but to just divide people according to race. That is a reality that I see across this province. And as we seek to transform the legacy of poor spatial planning, which was not done in the interest of building a unified citizenry, but actually excluding them from one another, it's not an easy thing to do. So when I speak of spatial transformation, we need to understand there's a generation before 1994, which even in their mindset, are still divided according to how they see each other. Post 1994, you would have seen systematic improvements, but again, the legislation which enables spatial transformation also takes into account that certain processes needs to be followed where projects can be, where housing programs can land, to be ensured it is done in a sustainable manner. So yes, indeed, spatial transformation for me is how do we rectify what was built up over 50 years of apartheid, to be quite honest. We are now 31 years into democracy. And sadly, not just in the Western Cape, but across this country, you still see remnants of poor apartheid spatial planning. That is reality. It is what our people are experiencing, but sadly, due to variable government and the decisions they've made, it impacted, actually retarded the process of ensuring true spatial integration by their own choices and by their own policies and by their own acts pushed through Parliament, which impacts the living reality of our people in this province. But as the minister, as a department, and just like the provincial government, we are committed to sustainably addressing spatial transformation. But simultaneously, we've also had to deal with criminal elements entering our communities. When the state seeks to address is in a sustainable manner the spatial legacies, we are now confronted with people who are not on a waiting list, for instance, who demand services, who demands a house. But we have people that are on a waiting list for a very long time. So within our own communities, there's now a new form of segregation that they are actually practicing, which impedes our ability to deliver. So remember, here to conclude and to be quite clear when I so you understand my response to you, spatial transformation speaks to the living reality that we are still confronted with a legacy of apartheid. It is there, it is across this province, but this government does not reinforce that spatial planning of apartheid. We seek to bring people together in a sustainable manner. And as the budgets are declining, which funds these various programs which are supposed to integrate communities, we are looking at alternatives. And earlier this year, in this current financial year, Cabinet approved what is called the alternative blended financing model, which is how we seek to now get private funding and partner with the private sector on the various forms of funding, because we realize that we need to accelerate our delivery through our various delivery programs as a department, because roads connect communities. Housing projects and programs integrates different people. Where we develop schools, where we develop clinics, and so I can go on. So it's how we find the adequate funding mechanisms and streams to fund our objectives through these programs, because we do want to see a unified, as far as possible, Western Cape. It's one thing to talk about addressing and redressing the injustices of the past. That's to put your money where your mouth is. And at the moment, the budget from a national fiscus will never be sufficient, which is why we are embarking as a provincial government through our department to do it effectively and sustainably with the funding that will make that possible. But that is a reality that we will need to address. Member Lekker, again, on the 1st of April 2024, which is within the year under review, EPWP Phase 5 came into effect. Now, it focuses on improved implementation. It actually defines impactful spending, how the grant funding is supposed to be spent. It focuses on enhanced training, which must deliver meaningful skills. But I think most importantly, which a lot of us tend to forget, EPWP is not a permanent job that you're getting. There's supposed to be an exit strategy, which is why Phase 5 is focusing on the exit strategy component. But something which also in the new phase differentiates, previously, a provincial minister or MEP signed off on the municipalities' EPWP programs as well. I do not have that authority anymore. We focus on the EPWP program through our department and what we can deliver through our programs, through our various projects. And the issue, and you started focusing on it, we got to say, because now local government submits directly to the national minister, not to me anymore. I do not have a line of sight of what they are implementing. And if it does not speak to the reality of what is happening in that municipality, you will see misalignment of EPWP program. It's not about being a sweeper or picking up papers. We long past that. It was phase 1 and phase 2. And the way that phase 5 has also been designed is to ensure that there are not political interference in these processes. That does not happen at the provincial level. Let's be honest with one another, it happens at local government level. We have seen various parties, and I will not mention names, who actually, where they co-govern a municipality, they use the vehicle for recruitment for their own party. That is a fact. That is why it's designed this way. And sadly, what is meant to empower our people in many communities is entrapping them in poverty, because a select few who are well connected because of the color of their t-shirt, sadly, are getting these opportunities. Again, only one family member per household is supposed to benefit. If you go to municipalities, as we said, to believe me, even I can do the oversight with you. You will pick up. There are people that are getting multiple or are currently in the multiple contracts, earning up to 500 Rand a day, which is the maximum limit set by EPWP. So it's how this body does oversight with its sister department, local government, which is where the problem is. So phase 5, it's noble. It seeks to actually limit the impact of politicians on a program which is very noble in its outcomes. It's been bastardized by politics. I'll be very blunt in that regard. Member you speak of the ISUPG and the spending issues and fiscal dumping. Chesal, as much as she's spoken on my forward, I want to be very clear, Chair. As Western Cape government, through the branch human settlements, we have a database of all the informal settlements, from the oldest to one that was even popping up yesterday. This is a government that believes in making data-backed decision-making. Not who makes the loudest noise, who closes the N2 or the R300 and demand services. The ISUPG grant, which the honourable member refers to, for the year under review, over the next 3 years, it's declining. And by the end of the 3rd year, we'll only have a third of our budget left. Remember, it's a national grant. So in actual fact, the National Department of Human Settlements is not committed to the upgrading of informal settlements. That is the reality which this standing committee needs to start understanding. Secondly, it's that we have a business plan which we submit, which I sign off and the HOD signs off. We categorize the city's informal settlement graded at level 1 or 2. This is what we envision to do. This is the budget we've set aside. Because anything in our sector starts with planning. Planning is some only, you planning for it. But now we are dealing with individuals who invade land. That's classified as an informal settlement. Many a times in areas which was never earmarked for settlement development. It's below the 100-year watermark, and so I can go on. But these are the people that now want to be prioritized above informal settlements that are as old as 28 years in our province. And then sadly, they utilize members of parliament, members of the legislature, even councillors, to drive a narrative that we are not focusing on informal settlement upgrading. That is not the truth. It is, you have a business plan that every time you need to deviate from it. Because they're closing the N2, they're closing the R300 and so forth. And many a times, and it's also something, Chairperson, which this committee needs to be aware of after today. Fair pockets in informal settlements are not even South African citizens. And these are the people who believe, it is alleged, that are fueling these protests, demanding toilets, demanding electricity, and. My mandate is to care for the people of South Africa, to care for the people of our province. But once we start doing informal settlement upgrade, because we are lambasted for only delivering one informal settlement upgrade in a year, for instance. But if you look at the realities, once we start the implementation phase, Chair, then you have a pocket in that informal settlement which do not want to be upgraded. And they are actually preventing us from what we need to do. So the fact that we can even deliver one complete upgrade must tell you the community worked with us. And that's why I continuously make this call to our communities, even those living in informality. They must work with us and take ownership. We must not allow criminal elements who are enriching themselves because they know government will need to do a toilet. Government will need to do electricity, and. But they are reaping the rewards, not us. We are getting demands upon demands in a budget that's declining. And at some stage, in correlation with the National Department of Human Settlements, we will need to ask each other. This grant was meant to focus on informal settlement upgrading. It was meant to be data-backed. You needed to have a business plan. Where are we with that now? As a provincial department, we have a business plan. We know exactly what we want to do and what we are seeking to do in a financial year. But at the moment, at local government level, they need to be responsive because people are closing the N2. They are closing the R3, costing the economy tens of millions of rands a week if it continues beyond that. But it comes sadly at the expense of those who have been briefed. We've worked through our relevant partners who go into these communities, who are willing to come on board, who want to be upgraded to a specific level of quality of service. Then we have to go and say, you guys have to wait. Further down the road, you have people that are now demanding toilets, but they actually legally invaded that site less than 3 or 4 years ago, while you've been 2 decades. And it's the reality which the Standing Committee needs to understand we function in. It's not an easy environment because it becomes heavily politicized. And people want to portray this department and myself as not caring. I care for the people of the Western Cape who are law-abiding citizens who work with us and not against us. Thank you, Chair. Judy?
Thank you, Minister. I will just add, I think Minister responded adequately to the roads issue. Just to say as well, what can we do if roads need to be repaired and maintained, but the budget is decreasing and we're facing things such as floods? Please understand that there's no contingency fund in the department for these kind of things. That means what we need to do is to reprioritize. That eventually means we push back programs that would generally happen so that we can respond to emergencies and disasters, because both assets and lives are at stake. And therefore, there would be a change in the priorities. The second thing which Minister touched upon is the finding alternative sources of funding. There ain't enough funds in the fiscal envelope. Therefore, we have to go to the private sector for partnerships. We have to go to find new sources of funding. We need to review revenue models within the department and ask them, how do we use this to attract alternative sources of funding? Then new delivery models, new ways of delivering roads. We can't do what we used to do, but there's always going to be a push and a pull. If we do new equipment that does the work, it means less jobs. So we have to choose. What are we doing? Create more jobs because we have labor intensive, deliver faster because we have new equipment. And so there's those conversations that continuously have to be considered. Then as far as the ISUPG is concerned, I just want to say there is no stalling of projects. Nothing can be rolled over. Funding can't be rolled over if they are not committed in the first instance. Municipalities can't be expected to roll or to apply for rollovers if the basis upon which they are cut is that we are looking at the first quarter of the expenditure. No municipality can go through procurement in 3 months. It just doesn't work that way in a municipal financial year. There is no issue around, or it is not because of weak contractor management. That is not the issues around the expenditure concerns for UPG, but it is about bulk services in municipalities and the availability of bulks. It is about the uncertainty around the infrastructure budget. You can't expect a municipality to commit an infrastructure budget if they're not aware that they're going to get it for that financial year. You can't expect them to commit anything in a financial year if the outer years are declining in real terms. Because infrastructure is a long-term game. It is something for which you have to have certainty, and you must definitely know that your projects are covered for the next 3 years at a minimum. Fiscal dumping, I'm afraid there's no fiscal dumping in DOI. We do not transfer any money to any municipality unless that money has already been spent and unless there's progress on the sites. So there's no, the money has been paid and somebody ran away with the money. It is money paid for actual work done. And therefore, if the work is done and the money has not been paid or dispersed, or the money has been retracted by National, then we sit with an issue that we can't count those opportunities. And so this is a complex space, Chair, but I just want to say it's not as a result of mismanagement. It's not as a result of municipalities not wanting to upgrade informal settlements. We need to understand the situation, and we need to remember, even if they deliver, but there's no good governance, and good governance means you can link your procurement to the budget. If they are unable to do so and they are qualified, all we see is the qualification. All we see is the irregular expenditure. Then everybody forgets this is about delivery. This is about balancing good governance, with delivery. And therefore, the things that I've just mentioned is to make sure that we find that balance and that we can actually deliver homes to people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister HOD. As I mentioned earlier, the next members for questions is Member Mbombo, followed by Member Petrus. And after that, we'll go to answers again. And the rest is then Member Bryant, followed by Member Heron, followed by Member Lacker. So Member Mbombo, over to you.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive response. I think I just want to go back so that we get this clear and out. We're talking on page 7. We're still on page 7 on the forward. Because we might end up going round and round in circles, and then we don't. So let's get it out. A minister, the part of your forward in the second last paragraph, it talks about the department must continue to focus, I'm quoting as it is, on spatial redress, ensuring that infrastructure investment brings communities closer to economic opportunities and creates a more inclusive, sustainable Western Cape. So the buzzword is a spatial redress. It is there. And then if you look in terms of the medium-term budget policy statement of 2024 for the Western Cape, the Provincial Minister of Finance spoke about the budget to weather the storm. And then if you look in terms of what he was saying under the infrastructure, he was saying that the job strategy is for the growth strategy, the key driver is about the infrastructure pipeline and, again, spatial planning. That would be a forecast as a budget policy priority. I'm quoting things as they are. If you look at the For You magazine for the executive, we're talking about the ministerial priorities. Under the Department of the Infrastructure, the last part of the priorities, we have got the spatial transformation through the human settlements. So it's there. So the question it's about at what extent, and if you look in terms of the appropriation budget in November 2024, there are monies that have been allocated for the spatial planning. It is there. So at what extent that there's been a progress in regard to that? Because I'm talking about what is there. And I don't even want to do a comparison of what has been said, what is there. And then the second thing, which is part of the forward, is on the issue of this quoting. This includes increased emphasis on renewable energy and energy resilience. The second question. If you look in terms of the energy, again, from the last year's medium-term budget policy statement, there's a whole thing about moving towards the hydrogen energy, and also, but my question is around whether there is that plan, because it is said that there was going to be the hydrogen and gas, whatever plan in relation to that. At what extent that the plan, I don't want the specifics because we're still going to go to B in terms of the performance. Is there the plan in this page, or is it where? So that's the two things. But the main thing that we want to get it done, and so that we don't come back to this issue, is there a special redress that is happening as according to the APP, medium-term budget policy, and also in terms of what the cabinet is saying, and also lastly, as part of the ministerial priorities that's what we have been provided, so that we get done with that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Mbombo. Thanks for also referencing the pages. Member Beatrice, if I can hand over to you, we're still dealing with Part A, page 1 to page 2. So handing over to you, Member Beatrice.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Chair, I want to go to page 21. And I want to know what are the impacts of the supply chain management challenges on housing delivery and services.
Thank you very much, Member Petrus. Minister, over to you and the department.
Thank you very much, Chair. If you want to, actually, I will play a tag team on this one. Member Mbombo, special planning and special redress, linking it to the MTBPS and the budget, which seeks to fund that as it touched on it. Indeed, once we delve deep into the detail in the relevant section of the annual report, you will start noting the projects which we have implemented, the number of opportunities we have created, the areas it spans, but we need to understand that that is what was implementation ready, which obviously the budget could fund. We will note that the number, even in the non-metro areas, I'll take your constituency as an example in George. We are now putting various housing programs on the same site. We have military veterans, we have first home finance, the normal BNG, and informal settlement upgrading very near that corridor. So you are seeing actually the redressing the injustices of the past. We're seeing the implementation of these various programs, and not just in a book. Houses were handed over. So we bring all these programs together as we seek to redress the injustices of the past, realizing that we are incorporating people from various backgrounds into one singular project site. So the process and the funding of that process is quite, I think, once we delve deep into the detail of these projects and project specific, we will delve in a lot more detail. But indeed, it is happening as we speak. In terms of the energy resilience program, indeed, as you are aware, Riversdale is the pilot site for this provincial government. For the year under review, we have done the sod turning. The construction phase is actually occurring in the current year. And well, of course, I've done site visits for the year and post the sod turning to ensure that we remain on track, because the first phase of the Riversdale pilot site focuses on solar, but also BESS, which is the storage of the excess energy that it generates. You will see the distribution of the energy that has been generated through the municipal network into the community of Riversdale. The one component focuses on the industrial component of that site, because if we can ensure energy security, investment will follow. We have seen for the year under review, just post the sod turning, that we have seen investment flowing into Riversdale from the private sector. The second phase is what will happen in this current financial year, where the excess energy that is generated will then be disbursed to targeted indigent households. So indeed, the energy resilience focuses on ensuring energy sustainability and surety for investment for the private sector, because it will create jobs as we seek to address the social aspects within this community. And by providing the indigent households with cheaper energy, which is ultimately where the municipality is heading, you will see the resilience pattern emerging itself in Riversdale, and we will be following that, the implementation of that pilot site, as there are a number of other municipalities which Cabinet also in shortlisted for the next phases. But we want to learn through this one, to ensure that it does happen. So indeed, linking that to the renewable energy focus of Cabinet, through my department, we have various roles. That's why I said the HOD is going to play wingman on this one, because we do various things, which speaks to the energy resilience program of the provincial government, but we have a specific role to play in that. I also ask that the HOD does speak on the green hydrogen plan, because again, my department had a specific role. Within the year under review, we delivered on that role. It's now what is the next step in the current financial year. So I ask that the HOD please touch on that, given that we are noting also what the private sector are moving towards in terms of their relationship and their forecast for green hydrogen as at a global scale, but also in the African continent, but also in terms of South Africa. So actually, we can touch on that. Then also, Member Petrus, in terms of the impact of supply chain, actually, if you can just delegate that to the relevant official, because indeed, supply chain and local government is at times problematic, and it does have a very vast and negative impact for municipalities and the ability to deliver.
Thank you, Minister. Through you, Chair. Just to speak about the energy program in the department. As you may know, the different departments were assigned different projects under the energy program for the province. One of ours was the gas to power work that we started in 23-24, and the focus was on the demand for gas to power. The work in 24-25 focused on the supply side. In other words, how the gas would be sourced. The position was presented to and adopted by the Energy Council in March of 2025 and subsequently adopted by the Western Cape Cabinet. The green hydrogen question, just to say that program is driven by DDET, not by DOI. But the progress on that is to say that the as opposed to the Western Cape going into the green hydrogen space alone, that there would be a 3-Cape agreement. So an agreement between the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape and the Northern Cape, and that would be how the business plan would be undertaken and tabled to the presidency. Also to indicate that this plan has been presented to the Premier's Energy Council now. Now it's called the Energy and Water Council, and it's advancing towards the creation of a program management unit for this so that they can actually drive the conclusion of the plan and the implementation thereof. Then as far as supply chain and the challenges of supply chain and its impact on services are concerned, if you are referring to the challenges that we've mentioned in the annual report, just to state that since before 1999, there was an embargo on the development of any supply chain asset management, financial management, and human resource management system placed on all provinces by the National Treasury. What this means is that all of the processes in supply chain is manual. And that opens everybody up for human error. So that would lead to things such as non-compliance, and it would lead to things such as irregular expenditure, where processes could easily be automated, but because of the embargo, we are not allowed to do so. This is an issue that has now been taken up by the Minister of Finance, our Provincial Minister of Finance, with the rest of the provinces and the National Minister of Finance to say this is an issue for us, because you want to eradicate this from the system. And if you eradicate that and you could automate processes, it also means you can make them faster. And it also means there's red flags in the system beforehand that you can go check, which is a preventative control rather than a reactive one. And so therefore we list these as issues because they're outside of our control and there's very little that as a department we can do in this space. Although with AI and tech, you could easily have addressed it if you were allowed to do so. So that's why we raise it so contextually. There's an understanding that for our department particularly, if you remember what I've mentioned right in the beginning, if 90% of our budget is used directly or indirectly for supply chain, then it means the kind of systems that we use have to speak to that reality. And that even more places an emphasis on the need for automation in some areas. Now we are allowed to automate certain processes, but not the end-to-end system, as it were, or building a system for supply chain. So that's why we are listing these as challenges. Just to say the AG raises it every year with everybody because it's available technology. It's not like it's something that's new or something that we have to go to from scratch. But because National gave that authority to SITA to develop the IFMS on their behalf, they placed that embargo on everybody. And we have seen that for the last 20 years, SITA has not managed to put the IFMS in place, although billions of rands have been spent in the development thereof. And so this is just an issue that we're raising for awareness so that the committee can also understand that in our dealings with supply chain as a department, it's all manual as opposed to automated processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister and HOD. We are now, you can have a follow-up quickly, and then we'll handle Member Brian and Member Heron. So Member Mbombo with your follow-up, and then Member Bryant, and then Member Heron.
Thanks. Just a quick one. Are you confirming that the green hydrogen master plan does stick with infrastructure? So the 5.5 gigawatts, what's that needs to be within the MTF? We're only going to hear in the DDAT. Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much. Chair, I've got questions for Part B, so I'll leave those for there. But it was just in terms of the one item that was raised, speaking around the reprioritization of funding for certain infrastructure projects. Just in that, is that undertaken in terms of the reprioritization? Just to enlighten us a bit more as to how one decides which project should be prioritized over another, because I think it'll give us a bit more of an understanding of how that looks. Thanks.
Thanks, Member Bryant. Member Heron.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the MEC for his reply to my question. Without getting party political, I think I must acknowledge it as the boldest statement on spatial transformation I've ever heard from a DA leader. And I welcome that, because the Minister heads the Infrastructure Department, which is charged with addressing spatial transformation. I wanted just to understand, I just want to see if I understood him correctly, that spatial transformation, as far as the Department of Infrastructure is concerned, or as far as the Minister of Infrastructure is concerned, is not only about integration, it's also about addressing what he said you can see, which is the legacy of the apartheid spatial plan, which is not only the segregation of people by race, but there was also a hierarchy of investment in infrastructure. And that is surely a function of the Department of Infrastructure, obviously alongside the municipalities, to address the underinvestment, the historical underinvestment in communities that were hierarchied lower than areas declared for whites only. So the question on spatial transformation is, I just want to understand if I understand the minister correctly, that it's not only about integration, it's also about redressing the underinvestment in physical infrastructure in communities that were deprioritized or underinvested in under the Apartheid Group Areas Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. Minister, over to you in the department.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, Member through Chair to Member Heron, we need to understand that spatial transformation, because now we tend to speak on the physical that we see. And again, I thought 90% of all of our budget goes into funding programs that ultimately deliver. We seek to create economic inclusion as well through this process by empowering SMMEs and emerging contractors as part of our program, because those legacy which sadly pre-1994 was not a reality. But to do it in a sustainable manner and linking it to empowering our emerging contractors and our SMMEs on these various either roads projects, human settlements project, and so I can go on, because true transformation and true redress speaks to all of these aspects. But many a times we tend to be stuck just on the one component of transformation, which is the tangible, but also to ensure economic empowerment. So the way, and again, when you go through Section B, we go through all of our projects, you will see what we seek to do in a sustainable manner. And that is why I also say in the forward that communities as a partner are crucial, because these have been sadly pre-1994 the beneficiaries of the impact of apartheid, and many of them still live with it today. And 31 years later, had it not been for very poor national policy directives and directions, imagine where this country and this province could have been if we did not focus on racial classification, but on empowering our people, ensuring investment is done sustainably so we can bring communities together. That's why I did not just talk about human settlements. I speak of roads, because roads connects communities. It brings those out of the past, brings into the future. And as we do that, we also create economic emancipation and empowerment, which is also another form of transformation, which we all need. but in a sustainable manner where communities work with us on that journey to ultimate transformation. Will we ever accomplish 100% transformation in all its aspects? I do not believe so in my lifetime. Again, because we are dealing with a cognitive transformation that is needed as much as we deal with a tangible transformation in terms of spatial design, but also economic transformation, which does take time in a sustainable manner. So I hope I'm very, very clear through you, Chair, so that the honourable member does understand. That is the way, as the minister, I lead my portfolio, the way we all work as a team, realizing that we have a massive role to play. But again, sustainable, working according to these business plans, which factor in planning and from planning to implementation. And if all play our part, the community themselves, a lot of projects can accelerate, which is why I could have sat here and bemoaned the issue of budgets declining. Instead, this provincial government, and as the minister, I support that fully. It's how do we find alternative funding to accelerate delivery, because we need to redress the past, create the present, and shape the future. And for that, reality is you need budget to do it, adequate budget and a sustainable program. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So the question of prioritization, and we've mentioned it in the context of roads, so I'll just use roads as an example again. We publish every year what is called the Roads Asset Management Plan. And we use roads data and systems that tells us which part of the network requires the most maintenance or refurbishment or upgrading. And then, of course, we put a program in place which comes through the Standing Committee as well as the Committee on Finance from a budget point of view that says this is the projects that we are going to do. But now things happen in the middle of the year, or we have flooding or others. We come back to this committee and we tell you we require, just like we've done in 2023, in December of 2023, we required something like 850 million rand just to fix 70% of the damage that was as a result of the floods. So we come back and indicate these are the projects that we are going to prioritize, and this is the reason why. Particularly when it comes to protecting the assets or protecting life or connecting communities or restoring that connection. Because like I've said before, we don't have a fund, a contingency fund or an emergency fund within the department so that when it happens, you can deal with it. Also, we are reliant on disaster funding from the National Disaster Fund, as well as then unforeseen and unavoidable from a provincial treasury point of view. If we do get that money, we take both sources to understand what does it mean then from a delay in the program. But the key thing is we will look at what roads has the most economic activity that we must restore. What roads are there that is linking communities to emergency services where that has been cut off? Always we will put the community first. We will first restore damage where communities are cut off from any assistance or from each other. And then we will look at the economic activity, because we also understand that the Western Cape is an agriculture-based economy. That's what drives it for the most part. And therefore, we look at that kind of roads. But generally, in terms of prioritization, we use information and data that lends itself to indicating to us which parts of the network requires attention more urgently than other parts. And we have systems for that. So it's really data-led information, and where we then say on this basis, this is the roads that we prioritize. Of course, where something is entirely destroyed, we need to look at putting that first. What does that mean? And what does it mean then for a delay in the programs? But we always bring it back to the Standing Committee, and we always have to attach the budget for that, or the reprioritization of the budget. And in this, before we do any of that, there's always a conversation with the Provincial Treasury just to make sure that we stay within the rules and that we, of course, can be as transparent as we possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, HOD. We are the only person that I still got left for questions is Member Lekker on Part A. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chair. No, Chair, I have a follow-up from the responses that we received around the budgetary constraints and the reprioritization. Can I check, Chair, if that is in place? And if so, what are those projects that have been reprioritized because of the budget constraints, and what are their timelines? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Lacker. I think we can handle that in Part B, because in Part B we go into the specific programs. So we can sort of handle that as the first question of Part B, then, if that is in order with you, Member. Is there any additional questions from any of the members on Part A? So that is page 1 to page 42, or can I move over to Part B? Doesn't seem that there's any questions from any of the members. So with that, I am going over. Yes, Member. Okay, so I'm going over to Part B now, and your question will be the first one. So let's deal with that question from Member Lacker first, and then we can, after that response, get more questions from the members. Thanks.
Chairperson. Chair.
Can I-
Member Lacker, yes, we're just waiting on the HOD is about to answer your questions that you had. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Chairperson, you ask, and then you made a conclusion. You ask if there's anybody who's got question for Part A from page whatever to page 44 or 42. And I said, I do have, but you did not recognize me. You immediately concluded that my first question would be forming part of section B. So I'm not sure.
Okay,
Because
Member Lacker, you're more than welcome to
Okay.
answer, to ask any additional.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, allow me to ask a question on page 17, where there's a table 3 on the expenditure per program. And my question around that one, I wouldn't want to take much of your time by reading verbatim what is written in that table, but allow me, Chair, to ask a question that the department continues to make reference to the underspending because of the budgetary cuts. And this is, for me, a significant issue, because infrastructure is part of the department's responsibility. And I want to understand exactly the impact, whether the department has gauged the impact that this has, especially on infrastructure and housing, despite the ongoing service delivery. So can we just get an understanding, Chair? Is there anything else that could be done besides this continuous underspending? Because for me, if there's proper planning and there are issues, we could always be in a position to say, let's reprioritize. And is it nice to not to mitigate the possibility of problems that we may encounter in this? To Chair, on page 21, under supply chain management, there's no solicited bids, but the reliance on limited bids for urgent or emergency work. So what has been the progress made in implementing a standard infrastructure procurement? and project management process to reduce delays and improve efficiency. And this goes back to planning so that we don't have problems that we may foresee. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, is namelijk een mond vol, maar okay. Chair, before I hand over to the HOD, and again, the honourable member speaks to what is tabled here as under expenditure. On page 17, if she looks at program 4, I believe the reasons for that is actually quite publicly known. We are involved in an intergovernmental dispute with the National Department, and feeds into my HD's comment that, infrastructure needs budget certainty because infrastructure investment is a long-term game. And you can't be in a relationship where unilaterally budgets are cut. And it will appear as an under expenditure from our side. So again, the answer to the question is actually on page 17. I'll actually just expand that regarding how we can prevent that. And it's a very complex question to answer because grants are decided at the national level. And my position as the minister is, give me the rationale why you have just unilaterally taken 300 million out of my province. Give me the data to back it. If there's no data, then actually your decision-making process at the national level is flawed because there's no data to back your assumptions, which ultimately led to you unilaterally taking well over 300 million out of our province. That's just one program. What you do?
Thank you, Chair. So there was no lack of planning and there was actually no under-delivery. In January, we received letters, first in December, and then in January for the ISUPG, indicating that the adjustments business plan we've tabled is approved with all of the funding. There were no requests to remove funding in either of our business plans, and they approved it. We gave that message through to municipalities. Municipalities on that basis went ahead with the work. In February, and remembering that our financial year ends on the 31st of March every year, and municipalities on the 30th of June. In February, a decision is taken for a cut. I'm sitting with a letter that says there's no cut. Your adjusted business plans have been approved everywhere. In February, the day that decision was taken, we sent invoices on hand for a third to the value of 244 million. Before I received now an indication, and actually that was not an indication to the department, it was a publication, a gazette that says the money is removed. There was no science behind why 300 million. Where does it come from? What is it based on? Which projects needs to be stopped and which projects doesn't? So now we had to go back to municipalities and choose. You need to stop this. Please don't send the invoice for that. We can't be paying it because the snowball effect of this is the following. You sit with invoices that has to be paid in 30 days. 300 million suddenly ripped away from your budget, meaning you don't have the money to pay the invoices. But this has not gone through an adjustments budget process. So for all intents and purposes, we are still evaluated against the original budget. What you see in that table is merely a disclosure format. It doesn't even begin to tell this story. And this means that there are houses that were delivered that we couldn't count in terms of performance because we did not wrap up the final account because we didn't have the money. It means that we're now sitting with an accounting problem, with a budgeting problem, and that people are suffering as a direct result of this. So this is much more technical, and it has nothing to do with contract management, and it has nothing to do with planning. As a matter of fact, Chair, in the adjusted business plan, and this is something that we have institutionalized, we don't just submit a plan as the national requirement. If you get a 1.9 billion budget, you only submit a plan for 1.9 billion. Why not? Because properties get invaded. Because we deal with the construction mafia and others. We deal with extortion, which is a criminal thing. It is not the mandate of this department. We are reliant on the South African Police Services and others to help us to resolve this. We're reliant on the justice system to help us. So therefore, what we've done in the adjustments process is actually over and above the original business plan, is to say, to have as plan B, the following projects that's ready for implementation, please consider it. The response, we're not interested in your plan B. We just want your plan A. And therefore, if you talk about planning, there were sufficient plans and there were sufficient projects on the shelf to be able to protect the budget. It is not our decision. The decision and the budget holder, the grantor of that budget, they get to decide the conditions. And if they decide to take it or they decide to put conditions on it, we are beholden on them. And so the solution here, Chair, is what we've been speaking about the whole morning, and that is, how do we become less grant dependent? How do we find new funding into the system so that we can actually accelerate delivery? Even on the issue of acceleration, in order to accelerate, it means you have to bring projects forward, or you have to have new projects that is not funded yet, but that you apply for funding for, which we have done. No, you just plan for the budget that you have. And if that is the case, it means we are never able to accelerate with the current budget. The other problem also, as far as human settlements is concerned, it's an entirely grant-funded program. It's not like the other programs that we get equitable share from the province, and then we get this money from national. This is an entirely grant-funded program. It means we are entirely beholden on the national department that manages and holds this grant. Then in terms of the standard for infrastructure, reliant on limited bids and no unsolicited bids, I just want to clarify the statement on page 17. We are saying, because it's a question, sorry, the statement on supply chain. The question that we were asked is, did you receive unsolicited bids? Why is that important? An unsolicited bid is a bid that you receive from the public, anybody from the public, not in response to a need that was identified or requested by the department. The answer to that was no, we haven't received any of those. The department, the public can at any point, the private sector, give unsolicited bids, and we are then, in terms of processes, look through, report it, and so on and so forth, even raise it with others. We have not received that. Unsolicited bids is not the same as a limited bid. Limited bids is a well-recognized worldwide supply chain methodology, and it's based on certain things. The Provincial Treasury has issued instructions that clearly gives the circumstances under which limited bids are entirely lawful and entirely allowed. If we look at that context and we talk about an over-reliance on limited bids, I just want to state that the limited bids of this department is, let me just see, 1%. 1% of the total bids that goes out in this department. 1%. This department, again, contextually, 90% of our entire budget goes directly or indirectly through a supply chain process. Why do we do limited bids? You do limited bids when goods or services are designed or manufactured by a supplier. I'm not allowed to take somebody's patent and put it out into the open market and say, please respond to this. You do it if what we have is you have technology or technological advancements. Why? Because there's normally a patent attached to it. There's normally a system in the department that has already been invested in. You do it if you have replacement contractors. Why is that the case? In infrastructure projects, if a contractor has built something and they fail, there's not a row of contractors that stands in tow and say, let me fix somebody else's mess. Why not? Because they have to take out guarantees for that. Nobody wants to take out a guarantee for somebody else's mess that they don't even know what it is at that particular point in time. Therefore, what we do is there are always a limited number of these big contractors that normally say, we will take it on, because they can afford to do so. And that's why you go to a limited market. Limited also doesn't mean sole. There are instances where you go to a sole provider when they have designed the goods or services. There's also instances, Chair, that we go out on the open market and we only receive one bid, or we receive no responses. And if you receive no responses, but there's a service that's waiting to be delivered there, then you can't go out into the open market again because that's another 3-month process. And remember, we have to show that we've spent the budget. We have to show that it's in line with the procurement plan. We have to show that it's in line with our delivery program. And our APPs are tied to these things. Therefore, there's always the choice on what is the approach. What is the procurement approach going to be? It's for certain very specific markets. You can only go to certain people. Let's make an example of something that I've mentioned earlier. We engage F&B and they say, we want to help you so people don't lose their title deeds. How do I go out in the open market and say, okay, all banks, do you want to help us? This is F&B approaching the department. And what we did do in that instance is to say to the others, are you interested? We would like to have a conversation. And people say no. You'll end up with one supplier or one service provider. So I just want to say it's not a limited bid is not the same thing as an unsolicited bid, and there's no tie between the two. Then a standard for infrastructure. We do have standards for infrastructure and we follow them, which is why this department for the 2nd year in a row under this department received a clean audit. And it's probably for the old TPW portion of this department, the 13th clean audit consecutively. We are committed to following the rules. We are committed to empowerment. We are committed to delivery. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. With that, we are then moving over to Part B, the performance information, and that is from page 43 to page 148. Members, I hand over to you. I have Member Bryant and Member Van Wyk first up. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Chair. Chair, I've got 2 questions. The first one is it's I suppose first to note progress that's been made in some of the learning program, very positive. I see the artisan program and PWP as well. One program that I just want to ask about is table 11, page 47, the Masaki Sizwe bursaries. Just in terms of those bursaries, is there any obligation on members who receive those bursaries to continue work in the Western Cape province? I don't know if that's something one can obligate one to do, but is there a sort of work program that follows on from that as part of the bursary? One of the reasons I'm asking the question as well is if one looks at the racial breakdown of the bursaries that have been awarded, if one looks at all of the others, there's quite a common sort of a thread when one looks at the breakdown, the demographics. For this one, I see there's a much higher, disproportionately higher awarding to what one terms here as Indian race group. So I'm just trying to work out how that normally works and if those are people from the province and what the further process is when it comes to ensuring that if the Western Cape is embarking on this program of empowering people, that we obviously trying to retain them in the Western Cape as well. So that's that question. And then just secondly, you mentioned earlier in terms of the funding, the disaster risk management funding from national government. I know there was a delay previously in terms of getting that. How far is the province in terms of receiving that funding, and have we received those allocated funds to help alleviate some of those financial burdens and challenges that we have? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The work that we are doing on infrastructure around about pages 51, 52, we set out a fair amount of the progress that we are making. Perhaps if you could just expand a little bit on the speed with which this work has been done, because clearly it is something that we need to make progress on, and especially in view of trying to get to economic growth and having the constraints that we have within, as we understand it, within grid infrastructure in the Western Cape. Because I think from an economic growth point of view, it's obviously very important that we get good momentum there, and it's also an area where the private sector can probably play a role in terms of the funding of that. So I think that's one aspect. And then if we perhaps turn to pages 48, 49, in relation to the work, the crossover work that's been done between infrastructure and education and health, and just the extent on how that coordination is working between those various departments to make sure that one has got maximum efficiency. If you could perhaps just comment on that, would appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm handing over to the Minister, and then Member Lacker and Member Petrus. I noticed your hands for the next round. So, Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll hand over to HOD and the relevant DDG to respond, because again, the devil is in the detail, and they do take pride in the work they do through these various programs. So actually afford them the opportunity to account. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to get some clarity. Member Lekker did ask about the projects that were reprioritized. And so we could be supplying, if it's required, we could supply the list, tomorrow, of the human settlements projects that's been reprioritized and the roads projects that's been prioritized, so that you have them in writing. The second one, in relation to the question about the learnership programs, the first question was the obligation to work in the Western Cape as part of the bursary, and the second one is the Indian race group question. I'm going to ask Fezeka to answer that. Does the funding receive it? Yes, we did. The detail, I'm just going to ask how to give that. The speed at which it's been done in energy space, India are divided. We have the program where we actually need to provide support to municipalities. To the extent that it is research papers and position paper policies that we have to do, we do that within the relevant financial year. But for the PPF, which is the project preparation facility, that is largely dependent on the relevant municipality. For Stellenbosch, we're providing assistance to them, and they've had delays in their tenders and so it has caused a little bit of a delay. We also received applications from George, from Sultana and others. I had to write letters to the MMs, all of them, to say, listen guys, we have this fund, this is its objective. Are you sure that there's nothing that we can do for you in the form of capacity and capability? Because that's what that project is about, to provide assistance so that we can also help you in terms of your energy program. And so we did have a little bit more of an uptake, which we are busy evaluating for that reason. That funds specifically sits with the department, and where it is not used, it's rolled over so that the municipalities can get their assistance, and it's not used for any other purpose in the department. So I can't really take that and reprioritize it for a different purpose. It was meant to provide capacity and capability to municipalities, and we work at their because they need their research that was done, and what does that mean in terms of readiness to take this funding. And then the coordination between the Department of Health and Education with us. For detail, I'm going to ask Rene, but safe to say the planning for the actual service is done by Education and Health. They also decide who they want to implement their infrastructure, because they are not bound to use the Department of Infrastructure. To the extent that they do use us, ample coordination between us and they give us their IPM and their program in terms of their wish list, what they would, and we respond with our resource plan and our response that says this is an implement and this is how long it's going to take and this is the procurement methodology and how we will use it. For the Department of Education, for 2 years, also including the year under review, we received no IPMP, so we responded in terms of the work that we are completing for them. That doesn't mean that there's not proper alignment when they do have projects that they want us to implement, because that would mean they trigger it again and they send us the relevant documentation and we respond, understanding that they can also use other implementing agents. So that's the answer there. I don't know, Renee, if you want to add anything to it, perhaps.
No, actually, I think you've covered it. It's just that we have service delivery agreements with these departments, which is very regulated, how often we meet, which documents we share, and we do have a lot of collaboration meetings on a monthly basis to ensure we are aligned in terms of service delivery. Thanks, actually.
Thank you, Chair. So now I'm going to go, Fezeka, if you can respond, followed by Shafida on the disaster funding.
Thank you, HOD and Chairperson. In terms of the Basar, there is an obligation. They have to work in the department, and the obligation is in line with the duration of the Basar. There is an obligation. In relations to the Indians, what happens with Masakisizwe? The preference is given to people who are from Western Cape. There's a high possibility that it is Indians are coming from Western Cape. However, in a situation whereby we don't have enough from Western Cape, we accommodate people outside other provinces. But the preference is given to Western Cape. It is the second round whereby people outside Western Cape are accommodated. Thank you.
Chair, if you can just also respond by saying, while we provide a portion of the funding for Masakis, we also have infrastructure companies also contribute to this. And therefore, it's about empowering the sector because it's scarce skills and not just the department.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. We are then going over to first.
Just ask the question.
Oh, the disaster question. Sorry about that, Joe.
Morning, Chair. I'm Shafira Andrews. I'm the acting CFO. So during last year's or the 24-25 financial year, the adjustment budget, we received 571 million for disaster funding. We also received, actually received that, but the conditions attached to that grant was only received late January. So from late January 2025. So from that period, the department then undertook the task of identifying the specific projects, committing the funds, and then also getting your contractor to your programs in order so that you can spend the funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now going over to Member Lacker, then Member Petrus, and in the next round, Member Mbombo. So Member Lacker, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to double check with you. It's from page 44 until which page that we may ask questions for this round?
It's page 43 until 148.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Chair, my first question is around protecting our projects, contractors, and communities from criminal interference. And I would like to know what is in place to ensure that our projects continue without being interrupted by any criminal elements. And then the second one, Chairperson, okay, let me just say that question is informed by the problems that have been cited in page 44, where it says there are factors beyond our control. Moving forward, Chair, the issues of Masaki Sizwe bursary. Is there an intention to include and ensure that people with disabilities benefits from this program? That is the table 11. And if there is an appetite to deal with people with disabilities, do we have statistics? And which part of the programs does it cover for people with disabilities? And then, Chair, on page 64, on the system failures, given the persistent connectivity problems experienced during 24-25 financial year, especially those that are linked with the Microsoft externally hosted services, like your SITA. Is there anything that has been put in place to ensure that the access to core systems is uninterrupted? Page 64, cases of fraud and corruption. There's mentioning that the department what were those cases?
Member can I just ask you to maybe repeat that last part because you broke up there for 5 seconds from you made mention to a fraud and corruption something and then it went quiet for a while.
Oh, my apologies. There's 7 cases that are being mentioned there, Chair. Are you with me? Chair?
Or hearing you, yes.
Chairperson, there's 7 cases that are being mentioned. Which cases, 7 of those cases were opened during the 2024-2025 financial year. And I'm asking as to if we can be provided information on what happened there, the persons involved and their level in terms of competency at work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that all your questions for now, Member Lacker?
For now, Chair, but maybe if you want me to finalize all my questions and wait for the responses, I can do so. I think there's 1 or 2 remaining.
You've got your opportunity, so you can ask all your questions now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Given the issues on social housing, Chair, I think on page 138, Chairperson, there is an acknowledgement that there is poor contractor performance and procurement delays. Can we get an indication? Because initially there was an issue with contractor, but in the report itself, it says there is a problem with contractor performance. Now, I want to get a specific accountability measures of ensuring that such does not happen, even if it includes that contractors will be blacklisted or sanctioned. So I just want to get an understanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Lacker. So we are then going over to Member Petrus.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm partly covered by Member Lecker. I refer you to page, also to page 51 and 64 in table 12 and 15. And it's about the request for the forensic report on the weighbridge. And then I also want more information on that corruption cases for now, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. You can lower your hands online, and then we're going over to the Minister.
Again, I'll ask, given that it's program specific, which again, I'll ask the HOD and team to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So there was a question, and I'm now going to assign the other questions to everybody else, but I just want to pick up on one or two. The question by Member Lecker about the 7 cases. What were the cases in a little bit more detail, and could we get the names of persons involved and level of competence? We cannot give the name of anybody, Chair, or the level of competence. This is open cases. They are under investigation. And even if they close, there are POPI requirements. And so for that, we can't do it on an open platform like that. There's no problem briefing the committee. There is a way in which we need to deal with this. Especially, Chair, if there are recommendations by forensics that we need to report criminal cases. In that instance, even the criminal case needs to be reported to SEPS, which forensics usually do and gives us a report. And then SEPS and the National Prosecuting Agency needs to do what they need to do about it. Then the issue of poor performing contractors and whether they are contractors and whether we can blacklist them for poor performance. No, Chair. Poor performance isn't always the result of something that they did wrong, and poor performance is not a criminal thing. If we talk about blacklisting, then from a National Treasury prescript point of view, contractors are blacklisted when they are found guilty in terms of Combating Corrupt Activities Act, and the judgment has to be specific, and the National Treasury is the one that takes that action. Departments, however, for poor performance can restrict contractors from participating in certain projects, and that would be based on the type and the nature of the project and the reason for the poor performance. In this context, when we talk about poor performance on page 137, basically talking about in the municipals, we must understand that municipalities have capacity problems. We are, as a department, trying to assist them as far as possible, even with their procurement. But they do have capacity problems. They almost have no technical skill sets in their components, Chair. And we find that very often in terms of our programs for human settlements. That's why what we try and do is provide support to municipalities in order for them to be able to implement their programs. The protecting projects, criminals and communities, what's in place to ensure our programs are delivered seamlessly. I'm going to ask Petjenica to address that simply because it's something that we have spent a lot of time on and that we've included in our draft policy that we need to take through to Cabinet. So I'm going to ask Pet to do that. Thereafter, followed by Fezeka around the question of disabilities on table 11 for Masaki Sizwe, followed by Ramesh to address the issue of access to core systems that needs to be uninterrupted, and then lastly Bashir to address the issues on the 7 cases and generally what they are about. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning. So around the department's community participation policy or community involvement policy is what we are drafting to try and engage with communities prior to construction taking place. And part of that engagement process allows us also to build up a trust relationship with communities in such a way that when there is elements of crime or extortion, that can be reported earlier on also through to us through the structures that we set up, such as the project liaison committee. We also are looking at having the policy try and address issues around extortion, how we are going to have contractors perhaps come up with a of reporting from when they are experiencing and how to identify extortion, so that we don't also just blanket every engagement with communities as an extortion initiative. It should be something that is set out and being easily identified, like I said, by a contractor, as well as being able to unpack what are the channels for escalation, when you need to get an interdict, when we need to report things over to SAPS, so that we can act fast to ensure that we carry on with projects and we don't have it delayed by unnecessary site disruptions. So that's part of what we are engaging on to try and bring forth to assist contractors. Thank you.
Okay. In terms of people with disability in the master program, we have 9 applicants. That means that they are included in the Masakizwe program. And fortunately, Masakizwe program makes sure that people with disability are one of our focus areas. Hence, we have this number. And we also engage the universities. Once we have awarded them a bursary, we engage the universities to make sure that they are accommodated. Thank you.
Thank you. Whilst we understand that all organizations that use IT systems are vulnerable for whatever reason, especially so if we are a user of a system from another organization like CETA or the CEI, we have put in place failover procedure to ensure that whenever a system goes down, we have an alternate way to continue business. So these may be other IT solutions we use, or even manual systems that we use to ensure that business continues. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, members. The 7 cases on hand in relation to fraud and corruption, they range from gross irregularities, 2 of which are actually still being investigated and were initiated during the time of the former Department of Human Settlements. So those are not completed yet, they're still under investigation. And then the others relate to possible possibilities of corruption and or nepotism, as well as cases of theft of movable assets. In relation to the request for the report on the way bridges, there was a PI application that was received, but because the department internally has not yet finalized the implementation of the recommendations from Provincial Foreign Services, only once we've been able to complete that, will it be possible to the release of that report to the applicant.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the responses. I have currently member, okay, so I have member Mbombo that I think has got a follow-up, and then member Van Wyk.
Thank you. Just for clarity, you mentioned that you got an allocation of 500 and something million from the disaster on the infrastructure, but the last time I checked, it was about 947 million for the disaster-related infrastructure reconstruction and rehab. That was long overdue from the previous years, but you quoted 500 and something. The 940 something was at the time inclusive of I think the agriculture and also the 300 and something that was coming from the transport. But now you have dropped the figure. Can I just have that clarity? Then I can now ask other questions. The other question, it's about in relation to, because if you remember advocates specifically, Advocate Chantal, because I look you in the eye at the time and then I ask you if you'll be able to utilize that money for the disaster, because you had a short period to come up because they indicated that use it all. Because I asked at the time, so if you get the money in December and yet the financial ends, how will we be able to So at what extent have you been able to make use of those, not only for the roads, but also for the agriculture? I'm not adding the education one because it goes to them directly. And then the other part, in terms of the priority human settlement area, I don't know what is the abbreviation you use, but I'm just summarizing. PH, blah, blah, blah. You mentioned that you have already completed the 5 IDPs out of 18. Which of those municipalities have you already completed of those? I'll check the page. I forgot now, but I'll look at the page. You did mention somewhere in the page. And then the other part is on the roads, what do you call it? RAM, Road Asset Management Plan. Maybe it's the way you wrote it. I think it's 97 or 98, that page, the way you wrote it. But from mobility perspective, as a chair of mobility, the way you put it in terms of the maintenance of the roads, more specifically in regard to the gravel network, where the average thickness now will decrease, and also on the unpaved roads in regard to that. Having said that, you were allocated part of the assets. I think it was last year where there was about 190 million. Now that comes from the province. I'm not talking about the disaster one. So if you have had an allocation for the management of the assets, why the roads are not included? Because for me, whose constituency is not in the metro, the gravel and pavement of the roads does not only impact on the people, but even it takes longer for an ambulance to go into those kind of roads. So I always prioritize the anti-saras of the non-metros beyond just for the roads, the freight and all of that, the urgency. So why these roads were not prioritized, more so the gravel and all of those. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sort of also just following on roads on page 99. There's reference there to the current maintenance backlog of the roads. Infrastructure is approximately 32 billion rand. I'm not sure if that covers both gravel and surfaced roads. And I suppose my question is, how do we tackle this? Because it can only get worse, given the limited budgets that we have and all of those fiscal constraints, because obviously this is something that's affecting citizens, the economy, and social conditions and people who need to make use of these roads. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Actually,
Thank you, Chair. So let me start with the last question first. How do we tackle this? Through borrowing via the Provincial Treasury and the National Loans Committee and alternative sources of funding, because we do not have enough money in the fiscus, as you well mentioned, member. Then to Member Bambu, I'm going to explain the split in what we are talking about in terms of the disaster funding. But just to say, funding that we have received as DOI was funding for ourselves, and there's a split of that 587 million between ourselves and Cape Nature. Agriculture got their funding directly. The reason why we got the funding for Cape Nature, there's no national department through which they could give Cape Nature that money directly. So they did it through the Provincial Road Maintenance Grant. But Shafida will explain the split. Then in terms of the PHDAs, I'm going to refer that question through to the DDG for Human Settlements. And then the issues around the rent, the priorities for the gravel road network, I'm going to ask Michael to expand. But just safe to say that we have been struggling as a department for the last 10 years with the gravel road network, not prioritizing it, but because in past we could mine the gravel, get gravel, and it was quite easy with the borrow pits. Now it's considered a mining activity. And so we have to do a mining application every time that we want to get gravel to do this. So I'm going to refer that to Michael just so that they give you some of the innovation and things that we've been putting in place to circumvent that process and hopefully then accelerate the maintenance of the gravel road network. So first to Shafida, then Lapika, and thereafter Michael.
Thank you, actually. So the department was allocated 571 during the adjustments budget. Of that 571, 388 is for our provincial roads, and then 183 is for Cape Nature. When that was tabled during the adjustments budget, at that time, we didn't have the conditions attached to the 571. The national department then only provided us that details of which projects and which project listing we can select projects for implementation from at the end of January 2025. I hope that clarifies. Thank you.
So maybe just to add, the 587 that we received directly from the National Disaster Fund. It does not include the money that we've received from the Provincial Treasury that also deals with the disasters, which is in your question about the difference. We didn't decrease anything. This was the money that we received from National, that when the disaster started in 2023, they gave to every other province except to the Western Cape, and subsequently we got that money. Moving on to Lapika.
On the 5 PDAs, the areas are Stellenbosch, Drakensberg, Pito, Knysna, and Overstrand.
Thank you, HOD. Look, when it comes to gravel road regraveling and gravel road priorities, gravel road network is assessed in full, or at least the managed component of the network is assessed in full on an annual basis. We do then set up priorities around roads which need to be regraveled. We've got an A and B list. The lists, make up about 1,000 kilometers of gravel road that needs to be tended to. Each of those gravel roads, in order to regravel, material we do through opening up borrow pits. In order to get them and activate them and start mining material, they need to go through a lengthy legislative mining permit process after it's been prospected. So those processes involve engaging with the MRE to get the required mining permit. It then goes through a land use process that must be approved, and then we expropriate. So it is a very lengthy process, takes anything from 2 to 3 years for a single borrow pit, and costs us around R1 million per borrow pit. In the past, we've struggled with stakeholders around getting those borrow pits ready. However, in the 24-25 year under review, we put a 5-year plan in place, which means that we manage roads, identify roads to be graveled over a 5-year period, and make sure that we then activate borrow pits in line with those priorities. Regraveling is done at the moment through our DMs. And of course, as you'll know, what is spoken about in the report, events after the year, is that we are looking at a different delivery model, which see us hopefully increase the kilometers of gravel road regraveled in the coming years.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the gravel road network, one of the key objectives of the department and the minister for this financial year and the next 3 years is actually also the upgrading of the gravel road network, which will put a very particular focus on the gravel road network and how we deal with it. And of course, underlying that is that we need to find an alternative source of funding that will specifically be dedicated to that purpose.
Did Member Mbombo's got a follow-up, and that seems to be the last question on part B. So I'm going to allow Member Mbombo if there's any other questions on part B. I see there Member Petrus is putting his hand up. So Member Mbombo with a follow-up, then Member Petrus, and then we can conclude. Thanks.
Thanks. Still on the roads, because how was I make a case that that's now you don't want to decentralize, because as you alluded that now we have got a new model where the delegations you put into the DMs, now you are taking that away. You want to centralize. But it doesn't make sense that you want to add more in your portfolios, more specifically for these rural, deep down rural roads. I'm just thinking of like the roads in the Wuppertal, in the Morsvlei, and all of those. Recently, we're actually in George. I can't remember that road. These are the roads that have been like, when I used to drive in those roads, they were so stranded and they were not being taken care of. But the point is about, why would you want to centralize instead of continuing supporting the DMs in managing those roads in their areas? Because they are actually sort of neglected, but instead provide more of the resources to the DMs to be able to take over. But what I've seen now, the model that you're applying, it's about bringing them putting more additions to the portfolios, because we've got a huge portfolio. I don't even want to talk about the schools, the health facility and all of those, but you are taking back the district municipality roads. That I understand it was a delegation, but why want to add those? As I'm saying, because the issue now is about the thickness of the gravel roads, where you are worried about, and also the issue of the unpaved roads that you are worried about. Yet your model wants to bring everything centralized to the province instead of letting it go with the DMs to continue with those.
Thank you very much. Member Petrus online.
Yes, thank you again, Chairperson. Chairperson is on page 122 and it's table 25, and it's about strategies to address underperformance. Now I want to refer to bullet 3. Can you perhaps explain in short the business plan process? And then did we manage to upgrade the framework for title deeds, the policy framework for title deeds on page 125? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Member Petrus. Minister, through you.
Thank you, Chair. And, I'll respond to Member Mbombo's question pertaining to the new roads delivery model versus the current agency agreement with district municipalities that will be coming to an end in 3 of those districts on the 31st of March 2026, and the new model takes effect 1st of April 2026. But for the honourable member to understand that the roads agency function and the agency agreement, we were actually paying the municipalities to do 5 specific tasks. The agency agreement cost the provincial government around about 1 billion rand a year for you to execute 5 functions. So the principle of value for money, what were we buying for the 1 billion rand? We agreed upon targets. If you have to have certain milestones, and I'll use the example of why the 3 specific districts we are terminating our agreement in totality. We need to understand that if almost 78% of your agency agreement funding goes into paying staff, that's less than 30% to actually deliver the service which we have agreed to deliver to this provincial government. That's not value for money. But take it even further. In one of those districts, we picked up that we were actually topping up the salaries of senior managers that had nothing to do with our function. Again, it contributed to less money being available for the actual service delivery. Then you dealt with the third complaint, and again, the three districts are known. It's Garden Route, it's Cape Winelands, and it's Central Karoo. In all those three districts, the agricultural sector will be bemoaning the fact that we were not delivering services through our agents, a level of service which I think they actually have the right to. So the value for money proposition has been at the forefront of, we are aware budgets are getting less. The complexities with which we deal with on our provincial road network were getting more. Because even in the agricultural sector, what we call agriculture is agritourism and all these other formats. But the prioritization of roads, again, was not happening accordingly. Remember, Mbombo, it's either I didn't take, I said the department, we can't talk about value from a principle, but we allow wastage of 1 billion rand annually through district municipalities. Then we then did a cost comparison. What's the cost of regraveling per kilometer? All the variables linked to that. How can it be that the district municipalities, in principle and according to the constitution, all have the same functions? The roads agency agreement, which we agree upon with these municipalities, is similar in text. It's just the milestones they need to accomplish in their district, which differs. Now, if for 5 to 6 consecutive years, your district municipality doesn't even do 3 of the 5 segments which you agree to execute on our behalf, why must I continue paying you? Why is it that to re-gravel a kilometer in your district costs more, double, and just the other variables? Again, we already, the staff belong to us. Pay that is. We just ask you to execute and use our manpower effectively to execute our function on our behalf. But sadly, over the last decade, and this has been a discussion for more than a decade, the roads agency function agreement was never meant to ensure financial sustainability of district municipalities. But they started using our funding, our money meant for service delivery, to do totally something different than what it was actually intended to do. So we, in all of our districts, and I mean in the Garden Route, there's the Garden Routes, we also outsourcing. Logical continue like that. When you go to the Central Karoo, which by the way, the Garden Route and our DRE team were already doing almost all of their functions. It does not make sense to continue having that agreement in place. It's an insane person that does the same thing over and over and is expecting a different outcome. The Cape Winelands, again, they had to do 5 functions. I think they got to 3 of the 5. And over 12 years, and even there we have a provincial team called the DRE team, started doing their work as well. So why duplicate? And you're paying people to do a function, but you're really now actually bailing them out by helping them. It doesn't make sense. So this has been a decade-long discussion. So it's not centralizing, it's how do we add value for money? How do we utilize these teams? We are paying the salaries to be more effective, to be more productive, because we are confronted with variable challenges. And I mean, we have a very vast gravel road network. And that's the basic thing that districts had to do. I'm not even talking about the other maintenance stuff. And they were failing to do that. So through a financial point of view, the HDNI and I in the financial year under review asked ourselves, do we continue with this? Or do we end a decade-long discussion which was actually heading towards one direction? How do we optimally utilize the funding at our disposal to be effective for the people of the Western Cape? And the district's agency agreement model was not working for us in the Garden Route. It wasn't working for us in the Central Karoo for nearly a decade, and it was not working effectively for us in the Central Karoo. Only 2 districts were doing all 5 of the functions we requested of them, above and beyond even. We were getting value for money. They showed innovation on how they could reduce the cost factors. The other 3 were not focused on that. Sadly, and that is a discussion separate from this standing committee, it is the financial viability of local government itself. The cost of the COE versus the outputs that the citizen gets. That is a bigger discussion. And we've but only taken the first step through roads as an example of putting the citizen first getting value for money from a very shrinking budget. And here we utilize roads as the vehicle to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The two questions, title deeds and the underperformance for human settlements, I'm going to refer to Lapika.
So to respond to the first one on the business plan, it's a very detailed process of engagement between the provincial department and the national department, and it goes through a round of reiterations. As an example to illustrate, we've already submitted at the end of August version 1 of the 26-27 business plan, and behind that sits a lot of documents that we have to map and go into detail, such as the procurement stages that we are in for each of the projects and so on. So that's a lengthy process, and we can provide narrative on that if needed. The title deeds framework, it's in its final draft. It's been internally reviewed by the policy and research unit, after which it will be submitted to our provincial minister for signature from the office of the HOD. Just to say that we've placed an enormous amount of energy in fast tracking title deeds in the financial year under review. And based on that, we have a total of 6,515 title deeds, which is a year-on-year increase of about 1,500 from the previous year. And that is because of the focus on acceleration and unblocking this area of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That then handles part B. And we then go over to the last part of the annual report, which is part D, the human resource management, which deals with page 185 up to page 214. I am now opening the floor for members. We have member Van Wyk. That's the only one currently, member Van Wyk.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Looking at the vacancies that we have, which they covered on page 190 under tables 321 and 322. I see we refer to a vacancy rate of 18.5%, which seems fairly high. Perhaps you can just do some sort of explanation of that, and then perhaps also in the critical occupation areas, whether that has got an impact on it. That's just below that on table 323 on page 190. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see member Lacker's also got a hand online. So member Lacker, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just want to understand which pages are we at now? I'm a little bit lost.
We are dealing with part D. That is from page 185 until page 214.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. My first question is on page 189. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you. You can continue.
Oh, thank you. It's on page 189, which talks to the filling of vacancies or the vacancy and employment program. And I noticed there that there are delays in signing of performance agreement and filling of critical posts to reduce service or delivery capacity. Can we get timelines for filling of vacancies and the effect that this has to what effect probably does this have in ensuring that vacancies have an project delivery? Or let me rather phrase and say, what effect do these open vacancies have on project delivery? Then on page 193, Chairperson, why has the vacancy increased so sharply for 2024-2025, especially in critical technical post? And what exactly are you doing about it as the department? And maybe lastly, Chair, how does the department ensure that notch progressions are linked to actual performance? And what is the impact of not awarding performance bonuses, particularly on the staff morale? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Malaka. Minister, through you.
Okay. So I will hand over the questions on vacancies through to Ramesh. But just to say that there's a context that we must remember and that I want to remind everybody about. And that is this year under review that we're talking about is still a year in terms of which there was a national control of the compensation of employee bill with the idea of bringing or keeping it as low as possible. That's the first thing. Therefore, every province needed to present a plan on how they would do that. And there were also suggested measures that were given by the national DPSA. Just to indicate in this province, what happened in this period under review is that departments needed to indicate their priority vacancies, their critical vacancies, and we needed to table that to the Premier, who had the sole mandate to then indicate, yes, you may go ahead or no, you may not. And that is for all departments. You can understand that that did cause somewhat of a bottleneck and somewhat of a slowdown on the accelerated recruitment process, which caused a lot of frustrations specifically for us. Noting also that this never affected the technical posts. For the technical post, though, let me say that this department has seen an exodus of staff to the city of Cape Town. Why? They can pay more. And they don't have to do all those functions. They just have to do one part of it. Now, if you have less work and more pay, why wouldn't you do exactly that? It means they get to spend more time with their family. It means they get a higher salary. It means they progress through the salary much quicker than they would be able to do in our environment. We've tried to match these salaries. It's simply out of our reach. I can indicate whether you talk about an architect or whether you talk about the head of department, compare the salaries. And then understand when we rock up because we're committed to what we do in the province, not because of the wonderful salaries. Out there, we simply cannot compete. We've raised this as a risk because it's not just about recruitment, it is very much about retention. And then there are a number of factors that has to be brought together to understand the seriousness of the situation. The first one is the scope of the work, and the second one is the salary that you get. But the third one that is linked to this is, of course, the issue of bonuses. And bonuses and not paying of bonuses is something that is a national directive, and there's nothing that the province can do about that. By way of example, if you just take the senior management band, for years prior to the issue of bonuses not being awarded to anybody, senior management had no bonuses. It started with the senior managers. And so, Chair, even in our department, if you look at vacancies, we sit even today around the table with chief engineers acting in chief director positions. Why is that so? There's no financial benefit for that. They already earn the salary of a chief director position. They're doing this because of the level of commitment, and actually for them to take up that post means they are foregoing the OSD salary so that they can take management positions. So there's a direct link between all of these elements, Chair, that we must factor in when we talk about why are there vacancies. And now you have to ask yourselves, because the other point is this very committee raised the issue about growing your own timber. How do we do that? What kind of succession plan do we put in place? But you sit internally with quite a lot of issues when trying to achieve that. such as the fact that you are working here with a technical department. OSD pays much more than the administration. That means many of these people need to take a personal dip in their salaries if they want to come into the management cadre of the department. And the reason around that is that the management cadre aspect around OSD was never implemented in this province for the build sector. I just wanted to sketch that context, Chair, because the answers that you will receive is directly related to that context. And so I'm handing over to Ramesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think HOD has given a good indication of the challenges and the constraints the department face in terms of filling all of our posts. Just to provide a little bit more context, we must bear a couple of things in mind. One, that the department has a retention rate in excess of 90%, which all things considered is quite a good figure. And then bearing in mind some of the things we have to do to ensure that we speed up our recruitment process because of turnaround, we've put in place several measures to ensure that we have a critical base of staff in order to execute our functions. So I'm going to hand over to Yandre, who will give you the specifics of the questions that we asked. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you, Chair. I think it's also important to note that there's no impact on our critical operations. The vacancy rate has no impact on that. And also since the directive on the implementation of control measures was revoked, as HOD mentioned, we've accelerated. So of the 410 vacancies in the department, we've already filled since the end of this report, we've already filled 73 and 217 are in some form of recruitment. So either advertisement or just before the appointment letter. One of the questions also referred to notch progressions. So we have accelerated notch progressions for our OSD staff. That has happened in accordance. That happens every 2 years. And then also the question may be referring to the fact that not all staff gets that specific notch increase. And you will see about a 50% statistic on that. That does not mean that the others are not performing. It simply means that they did not qualify. At that point, they might be new appointees, they might be in addition to the establishment, etc. So those are all covered. And then also to assist with staff morale, I think this department has a very favorable dispensation with regards to remote working arrangements. So we allow staff to work remotely for certain days of the week, which eases on their personal expenditure and family time. But then also this department provides in excess of 120 staff members with bursaries to improve themselves. We spend well beyond the 1.5% on our workplace skills plan to make sure that staff remain motivated and that we invest back into them for their investment into the department. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Bryant, I noted you had a question, and Member Lackett, I see your hand is raised. So don't know if it's a legacy hand, but Member Bryant, you can go, and then over to Member Lackett.
Thank you, Chair. Page 205, table 3.10.2, the one second from the top of the page. Just in terms of incapacity leave, I think two things that jump out at me there. Firstly, your lower skilled levels sitting at almost 20% of total employees using incapacity leave. So incapacity leave obviously is when your sick leave is run out. To get to the point where sick leave is run out to such an extent that you're moving into incapacity leave for almost 20% of your lower skilled workers is a bit of a red flag for me. And then just in terms of the highly skilled production levels, it's quite a significant number of days, 2,506. If we 2,506,000 is the estimated cost in a year in terms of incapacity leave. There 1,782 days, but concentrated within only 31 members of staff out of 558. I don't know if you'll have access to the specific details around those, and I understand if some of them are confidential, but would it be right then to assume that some of those people are effectively boarded off for the year in perpetuity, or because that seems to be, it's an average of 57 average days per those employees on incapacity leave every year. I mean, that's quite a serious cost to companies, so to speak. So just in terms of that, and how potentially one could use that to speed up efficiency going forward by addressing those. Obviously, you want more people at work, active and busy and productive. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Bryant. Member Lacker.
Thank you, Chair. On page 206, table 3.10.5 on leave payout during 2024-2025. I noticed, Chair, that there has been no leave payouts on non-utilization of leave for the previous year. And for if I may be curious, I want to understand in cases where the SMS members do not utilize their leave because of their obligations at work and because of the rank in which they are appointed on, is there any internal arrangement that gets to be done? Because probably it's not like they did not utilize those leave because they did not want to, but because of the pressure associated with the type of work that they are doing by virtue of being in the SMS bracket. So hence I'm asking, is there any internal arrangement that gets to be done as to if maybe they will be allowed to take their leave at a particular time, because also it's going to be against the policy to pay them for their leaves that they did not take. Are they being given time off after their leave cycle has expired, or what's the process? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Lacker. HOD, to you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm just going to give a little bit of context and then I will refer the first two questions to Ramesh and Yandre. When we look at incapacity leave, then I just want to make the point that a large component of our staff are road workers. So just the conditions and the climate and the issues around climate change and where they work and how they work, that plays a huge factor. The second one is also then when we talk about your question around the large number of days and where it's concentrated, please just remember to look at this thing in the context of the total number of employees. And the second one is mental health issues is a very big thing. And what is happening with that is ill health retirement is also a very long and tedious process. It's not something that happens quickly. And so more often than not, it's about their medical records versus our own assessment and our internal medical people that need to look at it before we can even consider an application of ill health retirement. But having said that, I'm going to ask Yandre and Ramesh to respond to that. The second one around leave payout, Member Lekker is absolutely correct around it. I myself find myself annually having leave days that I can't take, not because I don't want to, but because if you look at the context of the department and where we find ourselves, and you look at disasters and others, I can't have a team standing on the N1 in the middle of the winter while it's storming and I sleep lekker. I rock up every time because this is a team effort for the entire department. But it is so that there's a provincial policy. We are not allowed to do leave payouts. And so you lose it. It is not the best thing in the world, but it is what it is. And it's with the objective to try and also keep the compensation of employee bill lower. Then the other part of it, is there any internal arrangement? No. If you can't take it within a certain period of time, you lose it. And that goes from the top to the bottom. It's not different for the different categories of staff. We do try and make sure with where it is possible, where people can work from home, that there is some way of compensating, although it isn't because everybody's working. I can assure you, people stay at home, but they are working. We call them in meetings, we contact them to respond, and the response is immediate. So we do know and we monitor, we put things in place, and we do know that they are working. In fact, they probably work harder when they're home than they do when they have to come to the office, because there's no travel time involved. There's no, you work from 7:30 to 4:30. Many times when it's budget time or any other critical date, past 12 is something that's normal for us to work. And this is not a badge of honor, Chair. We are trying to find a balance. But if you look at a department where 10% of its entire budget is spent on compensation of employees, which is very contrary to the rest of the province, where you have the flip side of it, then it does mean that we make sacrifices, but it also means that we have to take care of each other much better. And we're trying to do that. We do try and see to which extent can we meet each other halfway. Unfortunately, we have to do that within the framework of the policies of the province. Having said that, Chair, I'm handing over to Ramesh.
Thank you very much, HOD. Thank you very much, Chair. Also, just to add, HOD has covered us very well, but just to add that while the leave calendar runs from the 1st of December to the 1st of January to the 31st of December, staff who do not take their full allocation in the 12 months are allowed to then carry it over and take it within the first 6 months of the next year. So we do cover it from that perspective. And then just to confirm HOD's assertion earlier that those extended leave periods, Member Brian through the Chair, is not only physical injuries, but it's also as a result of recuperating after an operation, for example. So if someone had a heart operation, they are off for an extended period of time. We do not take those decisions internally only. We have a health risk manager that assists us in line with the health care professionals to make those decisions.
Thank you very much. Member Lackett, I see you still have your hand up. I'm not sure if it's a legacy hand or new question.
It's a legacy hand, Chair. My apologies.
Thank you very much. Is there then any other questions or any additional questions for the human resources side of things? Or can we move on from there? It seems like we've got no further questions, which brings us to the end of the questions and answer sessions from the members to the department on the annual report of the Department of Infrastructure. I am going to ask that members of the public, if they want to provide any written presentations to the annual report, that you are more than welcome to do so at any stage. Minister, I'm going to firstly thank you very much for you and the department for the deliberations of today, but also for the work that you do throughout the Western Cape. And for the members that doesn't know, I follow the minister on social media. So 2 days ago, I saw he was in Plettenberg Bay in Kranshoek, and yesterday I saw he was in Swellendam, Bonneville. And this morning I thought I'd come in early. And when I came in early, I think it was just before 6 that I was here, the minister was already on the bike at the bottom doing the marathon, the cyclothon. So it is maybe a testament to the work that is going in by the minister and by the department, and all the extra effort. And it's really good to see, and it's really appreciated by us as the committee, and I'm sure by the members, by the rest of the members as well. So with that, Minister, I'm going to leave over to you for Any closing remarks that you might have, and then the department can excuse themselves, and yeah, then we'll handle the rest of the meeting. Thanks.
No, Chair, I see some of my colleagues want to go. They're excited to get on those bikes, I hope, when we leave here. Chair, no, indeed. Firstly, thank you to the Standing Committee for affording us and engaging us for the year under review. You would have picked up, and I do want to thank you for the last component of your questions to the human resource part. Because many a times we tend to forget that all the numbers and all the stats that you see in here is made possible by human beings. Human beings who are fully committed when there's storms and roads cut off communities. We have people that get up, they don't ask questions, they put up their hand and they just go and do it. We have an administrative team in Cape Town, who, even though they're not physically on that road, they'll play their part. So I do want to thank the standing committee members for asking these specific questions, because you would have picked up that this is a department and a ministry which have intertwined, and we are committed to the same things. It's how do we put the citizen at the center? Understanding that some of us are elected and some of us has been appointed, but the end objective will always remain, how do we change the lives of our citizens? So I do want to thank you for your questions, but also I do want to again reiterate and thank my HOD, my senior management team, all of our employees across all 5 districts. This is what public service should actually be about. How do we take the tough decisions, but those tough decisions are taken in the interest of the people who we all want to lead towards a better quality of life. And I do wish you well on the rest of your program after we are excused, Chair. But again, I also want to thank you for your oversight that you have done in the year under review to better understand our portfolio. This is really a very, very big portfolio. It has got very complex parts if you separate us. But when you put it together, you can understand where we are heading and the lessons which we've learned in the year under review. We are already embedding and implementing in this current financial year. So I look forward to the journey in this current year, but for the year that we are reflecting upon, I can only say that we have learned lessons. We are mastering some of these fields we are in. And the standing committee and your role does play a phenomenal role in ensuring that we deliver on our key mandate for the people of the Western Cape. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. With that, the department and the officials, you're welcome to excuse yourself. To the members, we have a little bit of a break, and then we can come in at 7:50 past 7. So that's about 10 minutes from. Thank you very much.
Chair, is there any coffee?
Yes, Member Brandt, there is tea and coffee and everything for you guys. So you're welcome to.
outcome 3 is leveraging infrastructure to bring about fundamental spatial transformation, which is aligned to this priority. And the department also talks about as part of the spatial development framework, it talks about where they've identified 5 within their 18 priority human settlement and housing development areas. They've managed to have 5 municipalities where their IDPs incorporates all of this, which is they mentioned Beaton, Stellenbosch, Drakensberg, and Overstrand. Now, where I'm coming at. Throughout, the department talks about the spatial transformation, but I always feel when they have to answer about this, there is a reluctance, and also I hear sometimes there is a issue of there's an avoidance to talk about this. Yet it is within there, it's their outcome. It's not something that is coming elsewhere. So at what extent, if you recall, Chair, I think the last engagement as a committee, they were, but it was more on financing. I think they were it was Overstrand, it was Musselby, the better functioning, yes. But it was more at another level of a agenda in terms of the item. But can we get on those 5 of the municipalities that the department says they are working with them and they've incorporated the spatial development framework within their IDP? Can we probably get, whether it's going to be the department, they could just to present, because we don't have to call them the municipalities, because they are implementing what the department is trying to achieve, because these are the priorities for the department. And they are saying out of 18, 5 have been achieved in these communities. But exactly what? Although the minister will make an example that in this area and this whatever, but when he make an example, when I look at the spatial development framework, it's not necessarily is talking, his minister is responding to the whole of those that are there. So is there any way the department can share the specifics within these 5 municipalities on the outcome 3 in relation to the spatial transformation as according to their priorities in these areas? This is on page 67, Mimi, just in case you want probably to have more specific. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Then Member Beatrice.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Prof covered most of it. I want to propose, Chairperson, it's not maybe different, but that we look into an accelerated spatial redress and transformation plan, which will involve municipalities. And because most of the pushback is coming from municipalities, actually it must start there in local communities and in municipalities, but they are not, in many cases, they are not supporting this and make it part of their priorities.
Yeah, thanks, Member. Yep. So I think it adds to what Member Bombo said, and I think it's important that we just firstly understand from the department how they see this going, and then really from there interrogate how it is that we can get better buy-in from the municipalities, especially the 5 that was also mentioned, and then handle it from there. So that would we'll incorporate that into that. I think that is seemingly then it for resolutions. Members, then I just now would like it was mailed to all the members as well. It is just the report on the garden route visit. So I I did go through it, and it does seem like a fair reflection of what was said. So I would just like, if there's any comments on it, you're more than welcome to comment. Alternatively, I would just like to get a proposer and a seconder for that, so that we can adopt that report, please. Member Bryant.
Chair, I've read it and I agree with you in terms of the accuracy, so I would propose that it be adopted.
Thank you. Member Van Wyk.
I'm happy to second that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. And procedural officer, that is then the business of the day. Am I correct? That is the business of the day. Members, thank you very much for the interrogation. It was fruitful and insightful. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. You must have a lekker day further. Thanks. And there's lunch in the members' lounge at 12:30. Thanks.